something beautiful about the song that they were able to create this, and you don't want to kind of break that joy or mystery.
I feel like sometimes learning more about the music and just diving deep into it gives you way bigger opportunity to kind of enjoy so much more. I can find the positive in almost like any kind of music.
It's so weird to me how we can't really explain some of the things, like why do humans like music?
It's interesting that you say that you talked about direction, things like that, because I also think like that as well. I kind of lay out a map in my head, and I am one of those people who, if I have like the slightest idea of where I'm going, I like to not use the navigation. Like I wanna prove to myself that I know it. Take even just like one view of it. So I'll just be standing in one area, looking in one area. I'll kind of look around and say, what if I was just seeing this and had no context for what was around me?
People who have musical intelligence are better with pattern recognition, and that might be something that you may not consciously realize, but maybe as you're going about your day, like you're able to like see patterns better or like rhythms better than maybe other people are able to.
And okay, you know for at least they've taken count 3. Like you know that for sure. So you can that's always, I've never really thought about this before, but that's always the thing that you can have in common with somebody is just, hey, how hard was Calc 3? Like, you know, how did you think Calc 3 was? And I feel like that's usually my icebreaker with a lot of people, where it's like,
interesting.
Yeah. Oh man, Calc 3, it totally whooped me. Like but yeah, I feel like the people on North Campus, while there are a lot of North Campus people in the best way, not necessarily derogatorily, but I do feel more at place there. That's and especially on like the music school.
I want to talk to you about that, man. That was really interesting to me, because I never knew you played. What instrument do you play?
I play the saxophone.
Saxophone.
All saxophones.
Amazing. And you're doing that double major.
Yeah.
Data science, saxophone.
Yes.
That's really cool to me, and I think in this podcast we'll definitely get deep into that. But just to close out that first conversation, so do you feel like when you're around those people, do you enjoy it more because you like to be around like academically oriented people, or it's like what kind of energy do you really feel like being around?
I think so. I mean, there's a part of that, but I do think it's because we're all kind of working towards the same goal. Everybody on North Campus, in the engineering side of it, is working towards some kind of STEM thing, or which is also not to say that I only gel with STEM people, because that's definitely not the case. But I think that everybody there is kind of amazing in their own way. And I mean, there's some people that maybe are less amazing to be around. But I think it's very you talk to somebody and there's so much there and so much that they've probably done, especially at U of M. There's so many of the engineering students, so many even you're a freshman and you interned at New Hampshire, right?
Oh,
yeah, that's like the coolest. That's so cool. And so to be in engineering, or to be just to be in those programs, it's very you got to have something about you, and everybody has something about them. And so it's very easy for me to get along with people up there, just because there is a kind of verisimilitude between us. So we're going to find something to talk about, whether it's Calc 3 or EECS 203 or any of the billion classes up there. But
I think it's really cool to be around them as well, because they care a lot about what they do. And to me, like that energy of caring about what you do, or like have something you're working toward, I think that's the energy in particular that I'm really attracted to. And that could be across any domain, right? It could be like meeting people at the gym. Like I literally just met you last week in the gym.
Yeah.
And I could just tell from talking to you that you're so driven, either with lifting the weights, because that's how we first met, or pretty much any aspect of life. You can tell within a few conversations with someone. And just like talk to people on the podcast about, I don't know, you're talking about like the wrestling championship video you watched.
Yeah.
The energy of being driven toward that. I guess applying to the academic world is like something I've been getting into more now, because I feel that energy in them as well. Like I went to some of these club meetings. I think M Racing, one of the clubs I'm in right now, is just fucking incredible to be around those people, because they're all so smart, and just like being able to sit around them and hear their technical expertise in these like nuanced things, and like how they're able to understand how these incredible technologies like race cars or Neuralink or whatever the world is developing now. It does feel good to be around those people. And for me, like when I find a person who's very academically, maybe technically intelligent in one area or some domain, but they're also like well-rounded in a way that they're just great to talk to. They're healthy. I think when you find those kind of people, like it makes me happy that they're like well-rounded but driven and purposeful. And that's what I really look for.
Is there anybody in particular that you've met where there's, you know, you probably met them predicated on, you know, one thing, let's say somebody in M racing, and you figured out they're have something completely different to them that you would not have assigned to them first when you met them? Like, is there somebody in particular that you would have thought?
It's a good question.
I can start off here because I remember because Sammy, he is somebody where when I first, so like I had seen him at the gym a lot before like I had ever like talked to him or anything, and then after getting to know him, like he is not only an incredibly smart dude, but like he also plays the saxophone. Like we have a lot of stuff in common, and there's so much there that's like past. Okay, it's kind of a big dude at the gym, like, you know, like lifting some impressive weight. It's like wow, you know, and I guess that's the U of M experience. But yeah, so is there anybody in particular? Yeah.
Honestly, I'll think about it with particular cases, but I will say that I felt it today just reading your bio. Like I'm like, I just know this guy has some cool like gym fella that I see at 7 every day, and then it's like, okay, like he's leading this he's leading this jazz band, was a blue bop jazz band. And the most incredible thing was like how you're also like academically inclined, but you also love music and you're trying to like formulate your career based on that. That to me was really cool. But I will say, with this podcast, I've had a lot of those kind of experiences where I'll know someone for years,
right,
and talk to them for an hour straight, like no phone, just like eye to eye, sitting here at the table, and like holy fuck, like I used to think that some of the things I did were very unique, maybe like a year ago. But the more and more I realize, the more and more I'm very similar to the world around me in so many ways that it just doesn't get spoken about, you know. And I think just sitting and learning about people and figuring out like what goes through their brain every day, and just like as you're going about life, there's so much more to everyone around you, and it's just incredible to just like talk to them and learn about them and see those similarities.
Oh, absolutely. And it's interesting because I didn't really I see the world in a similar way, and I didn't really start seeing it in that way until after I took my first year writing requirement here, and we had a full week where it was just about learning how to talk to each other. And the way that the professor, the way that she kind of framed it was she showed us like a college humor video where it was essentially showing like the inner thought process of people while they have conversations, and it's just three people having conversation, and the entire time they're thinking about, oh, well, what can I add to this? You know, what can I add to this? And I realized that I do that. I did that, and I don't necessarily talk to people just to, you know, actually talk to them. I would have talked to them to basically have them hear about me. And once I kind of acknowledge that, you know, because it's a weird thing to kind of have to process that I've been talking to people for 18 years now, and I haven't really, you know, gotten to know. Well, you know, sometimes you get to know people, but it's not necessarily from you actually asking them. It's just from circumstantial things happening around you, or you being in similar situations where you learn stuff about them. But, you know, just learning about somebody through conversation is something that I had to learn as a skill at university, which is crazy to think about. But, you know, it has made talking to people so much easier, for one. Like, people love talking about themselves for one, but it's the goal of it is not to get people to like you. It's just to learn about people. And so like it's very, very cool to meet people who are similar and can engage in a deep conversation like that. And, you know, but also the downside of that is then when you talk to people sometimes who are still kind of in the like, what can I add to this mode? It becomes a very exhausting conversation, I've noticed.
Definitely.
It's yeah. Have you ever like noticed that when talking to somebody?
Yes. And I'll tell you, there's this incredible book named How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. I don't know if you heard of it.
I don't think I have.
It's an incredible book, and that idea of how we're so self-centric in conversation and how to improve conversations, like exactly what you explained here, is written in that book. And when I first read that book my junior year, it was a weird feeling I got because the principles that were outlined in that book about how to win friends and influence people, how to improve your conversations with people, how to improve your relationships with people, they're all very, very simple things. There weren't anything like out of the box. Just listen, be curious, like these very simple ideas. But then when I actually read it at first, I realized that it's a lot harder to do it. It's like one quote by Jocko Willink, like it's simple but not easy. Yeah. And that, I think those skills with conversation apply. That it hit me right over there. That I realized there was one segment of the book that stood out to me. It said that when they analyzed like a bunch of phone calls in some time frame for a study, like the most common word was I. And it's basically, obviously it's like kind of a joke, but the real idea behind it is that we're always thinking about ourselves and we're always concerned with how other people view us. Yeah. And it's nothing wrong with that. It's just human nature. It's how we evolved. We care about our tribe and we care about what people think about us. But I think what he outlines in that book, all these strategies, are all about becoming a better listener. Yeah. And learning about other people and not being so self-centered. And I think that when I first started doing the podcast, I realized those skills that I'd read about a year prior, my junior year, all of a sudden, I started thinking about them a lot more often. Like, okay, what does it mean to be curious? What does it mean to listen? What does it mean to do all these different things? And I realized that I wasn't a great podcaster at first. Yeah. But I started like obsessing over those skills in particular. And I would look at people I looked up to, like Joe Rogan. And one thing I was remarkable to me about him was that he's done 2,216 episodes, I'm pretty sure. I just saw the most recent one, like 10 minutes of it this morning. Yep. And he's had 2,216 conversations that are pretty much all 3 hours long. Yeah. What was remarkable to me is that they were not just only his friends. Like, he's had everyone from Mark Zuckerberg to some scientific researcher who studies wolves to like Peter Attia to his best friend comedian. He's had everybody on this podcast, and he can hold a 3-hour conversation with anyone. Yeah. And I realized very quickly that wasn't easy at all. It was like one of the hardest things in the world, especially with certain people. And I would always think that's maybe the guest's fault if the podcast goes bad. But then when I really was 10, 20, 30 episodes deep, I realized that Joe Rogan was like the living definition of that book I read. And I started to actually watch it more intensively, and I noticed all the skills that Dale Carnegie outlined, he embodied them so naturally. And then it made sense to me why he's so famous and why he's able to do it so successfully. And I think that it's almost like when I'm talking to someone and I realize I'm talking too much about myself, I can almost see it like very clearly. But it's also, I think I went through a phase where I would never talk about myself, but then I figured out there's a way to balance it. Yeah. Where it's like, now when I look at my podcast, there's enough of me being curious and listening to other people, but then enough that I add in there that it feels like natural in a conversation, where it's okay to add your point of it, but it's also that you're listening in the background, you're curious in the background. And I feel like it's translated from the podcast to every interaction I have in my life. And it's become so natural now that I'm very grateful for that. But it took me like 3-4 years from the day I read the book to a day I can say that I feel like I've embodied it to some degree. But
do you still feel yourself ever slipping into that conversation style that you maybe would have had before, where you're not listening as well? Because at least I'll give an example. Like when I first met you, I didn't get that impression at all. I mean, it felt as though we were actually having a conversation. But do you ever find yourself ever slipping into it, or do you ever think that there's any instances where it's appropriate to kind of go into that mindset? Because sometimes when I'm with like some of my really closer friends, sometimes I'm not looking to have a super deep conversation the entire time. You know, sometimes it's just, hey man, I was doing this the other day, and then you were doing that, I was doing this, and so it's maybe not like a super deep 3-hour level conversation, but I'll still try because I still try my best to actually have good conversations with people, because I always think about when my parents, I'd come back from hanging out with my friends, my parents would ask me, what are you guys talking about? I don't know. My parents get really mad when I say that. And it feels like, in a certain level that's like, it's kind of endearing, because it's like, oh, you can get with somebody, you can talk about nothing with them. But also, sometimes it's good to kind of have something that's worth remembering talk about something that's worth remembering. And so yeah, do you ever find yourself slipping into that at all, or shifting your mindset?
Interesting question. I would say yes.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's not such a big deal because I feel like in the moment it's appropriate.
Right.
And sometimes when I do notice it, it's really just about awareness of it and like how long does it take me to realize it.
Yeah.
When it's in a bad situation. I can give you an example of both, right? Like I feel like right now in this podcast, it's mainly been about me so far and the stories I'm saying. But the energy I could feel here is like, I feel like you're still sharing your side of it. I'm still sharing my side of it. That it feels natural, that I'm comfortable sharing things about me because in the moment I know you pretty well. You know me pretty well. And it's naturally flowing in a way that I don't feel like I'm trying to take over the conversation or be like overly self-centric. So that's why like in certain moments that you have that awareness that you can kind of feel the energy and know, is it a bad thing or a good thing?
Yeah, for sure.
Second example, when you're with your friends and you're just fucking around, that's totally fine.
Absolutely.
Like not every single conversation has to be depth and loving and life-changing and thinking about eternity. Like it's okay to have those moments where you're just screwing with your friends and you're just talking gibberish and you don't remember anything you talked about at the end.
Yeah.
I think they're both a beautiful element of life, but definitely. I think more when I apply the things I've learned about conversations, they're either A, in the podcast setting because that's where it's most useful, but B, I usually apply more when I meet new people.
Yeah.
I would say like when I go throughout my day, I meet someone at the dining hall, I meet someone at the gym. Like I try to listen to them more to see like what can I learn about them and pick up about them, just so that I've noticed that people feel a good energy when you know their name or you know something about them and you remember something about them. Yeah. And obviously it's not some like bag of tricks to make people like you more, but I think it's a natural thing that it makes you feel good to make people happy. And I think that's where more I apply that skill. But there's some cases where I could feel like I become too comfortable and I fall into a zone where I'm like talking over people or I'm going too far deep in that. And it's just a matter of recognizing it and then shifting. And you have to just be okay with that. It's natural and you can't beat yourself up over it. And just do the best you can. And I think overall, there's a little bit of time for everything, in my opinion.
Right. And absolutely, people are not... I also remind myself that people are not thinking less of you for talking about yourself or maybe having a conversation that isn't, super, super deep. I don't want to make this just a podcast about how to have a deep conversation.
I'm down for 2 hours of that.
But yeah, it's like, but people. I like learning about people, and I like when people ask about me as well. I think we're all. That just comes with being a person. You're gonna want to learn about other people, and you're gonna want to tell people about yourself because everybody has a story to tell. And so I think, I don't know. I feel like I've had more of like meaningful relationships and friendships with people in the past couple of years, just because I've been interested when I like talk to them or or like they ask about me, or I've definitely changed a lot, and
I can see that
since coming here.
Yeah. I mean, meeting you and talking about this with you, the first impression I get is that you seem to embody those skills pretty well. I can just sense it. I
appreciate that.
But my question for you is that if you learned about these primarily your freshman year, like what was the learning curve behind it, and how long did it take you to get to where you are now? Because sure, both of us are probably not perfect, but I would say that I see in you've developed those skills to a pretty good degree. How long did it take you to get there, and like what was the hardest part about that?
Yeah, so it definitely wasn't immediate, and it definitely wasn't a linear process. It's tough to say. I think as soon as I was aware of it, I tried to get into that mindset a little bit more, and that started with my closer friends who I'd already known, where I started to dig a little bit deeper about them. Like maybe I've known this guy for 8 years, but I've never really gotten to know about, okay, what is your ethnic background like, or what kind of life did your parents have growing up? But it was not as much of, or it was a lot more of a conscious thought. Sometimes I would think about when I'm having a conversation with somebody, it would actually go so far in me trying to learn about them that I would only be thinking about what can I ask next, or what can I, how can I learn more about this person? And then I realized that that's not having conversation either. I'm just interrogating somebody, and I still kind of struggle with that now, because I'll meet new people and then I'll be like, oh, what's your name? How old are you? What's your major? What's your social security number? And, it feels like I'm interrogating them a little bit sometimes, and so I still struggle with that. I think I'm a little bit better at it now, but I think I still do go into that mode occasionally where I go so far in the opposite direction to where it's just an interview. And so, but I think I've found a little bit more of a medium in between those. And the interesting thing is, it has helped me leaps and bounds with talking with people who are older than me. Mm-hmm. Because it's extremely easy to have a conversation with somebody, even if they're like a year younger than you, or or like around the same age. It's extremely easy to have a conversation with somebody like that. It might not be the deepest thing ever, but it's you can. There's a lot of bases that are already predetermined by, okay, we're a similar age, do similar things. So there's already things there to be done. But when you're talking with an older person, especially if they're like 20, 30, 40, 50 years older than you, you probably have a lot less in common in terms of, like, their 20s are probably a lot different than your 20s look like. So that's where the listening and actually picking up on things and learning about them helps way more. And I feel like I've had so many better conversations and I've developed further relationships that I may not necessarily would have before I had kind of learned how to talk. It's like, I don't think I could have had a meaningful conversation. Like, I've had way more meaningful conversations with my parents since, I'll just call it learning how to talk. Since learning how to talk, and I've learned a lot more about them, and maybe I would not have known that if I hadn't locked in, per se. So it's, I think that's the greatest benefit I've seen from it. But that's like the biggest way that it's changed for me. I think that's how I started practicing it more, was I would just force myself to have a conversation with an older family member or one of my friends' parents, and like actually talk with them. Yeah. and make sure I'm having a full conversation. And I think that's some leaps and bounds for me. But I think that has kind of helped shift me to the place where I am now in terms of talking with people, where I think I'm an okay person to talk to. I think so. So I think that, yeah, I would say it was definitely not linear at all at first, and it was a little bit of a struggle to kind of to fight that overcorrection. But yeah, I would say within the past like 6 months to a year, it's been really solid.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I think the overcorrection piece was really interesting. I want to dive into that because originally we weren't having a conversation because we're so obsessed with us.
Yep.
And then we weren't having a conversation because we're so obsessed with them.
Right.
It's like, oh, we're trying to avoid this thing in the first place, and then trying to get that thing, we end up avoiding it again.
Yeah.
And I think because of that, while the thinking about other people is probably one of the primary skills sets in this, like, learning how to talk. Mm-hmm. I think you touched on it briefly, but another thing I noticed was the ability to just be present and listen. Mm-hmm. Because if you're just not there listening, then it's like, okay, I'm waiting to say something, you're waiting to say something, and we're just like saying things, versus I'm sitting here and I'm like actively listening to every word you say, mm-hmm. and thinking about it deeply before maybe I say the next thing. And I think that piece of presence is a really interesting one because it's so easy to get distracted. Like, I don't know how many times you're talking to someone and you say something to them and you see them on their phone and like they didn't even hear a word she said.
Yeah.
And there's just so many ways it's easy to get distracted. And even without a phone or something like that, mm-hmm. we'll just start daydreaming about something. And
right.
I think those are additional roadblocks toward it. And I wonder what your thoughts are about just those other roadblocks here. That how do we like overcome that? Like how to be more present when we're actually talking to someone.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to that first kind of establishing a basis of what the conversation is about. And that's not necessarily to say that it's going to be about one thing, but to kind of know that you're on the same page. And then like, for example, if somebody's talking about something that I've legitimately never even heard of or have not ever dug into deeply, I'm gonna ask him about it and kind of clarify some things before like we really get talking about something. And but it's I think there are a lot of distractions that can happen, but I think that can mainly happen when somebody is not fully like interested in what you're talking about. If because again, like I'll talk about my overcorrection. Like sometimes I would find myself getting into the headspace of what am I going to ask next, that it legitimately just switched around. It switched places from what am I going to say next to what am I going to ask next. So I wasn't actually like, I was just kind of listening. I was listening to their stream of words. Then when I heard something I could pick up on, I'm like, okay, there it is. So that was in and out of itself a distraction, but it's tough to say. I feel like a lot of it comes down to how interested you are in actually having a conversation with somebody that you're meeting with, because I have been in situations before when I am really I am not in the headspace to have a conversation right now, and sometimes that's okay. Yeah, and I learned. My mom told me, and this is like introvert's best tip ever. Like if you're just not in the headspace to have a conversation, ask questions. Yeah. Because this is not to say that you should always be a people pleaser. I like being a people pleaser, but it doesn't make somebody feel good to hear to try and talk with them and they're like, I can't talk to you right now. So yeah, I think I went on a little bit of a tangent, but I feel like the I can understand a lot of time like the distractions that people have, but I have found myself to kind of the better talker that I've become, the easier I've found it to stay focused in a conversation.
I guess this thing that you describe of what am I going to ask next, I find myself in that position a lot when I'm podcasting. Mm-hmm. Just because I don't think it comes from a lack of interest, maybe to a degree, but yeah. I think what I've noticed, it comes from the anxiety of like, what if there's an awkward silence?
Right.
And I think because of that, there's something in my brain that tells me like I always need to have something. So like I'm actively listening to everything you're saying, like, oh yeah, I found something, boom, right there.
Yep.
Build up the next segment of the podcast from that.
Yeah.
And I think in the last 62 episodes, there have been like 2 real awkward silences.
Yeah.
And obviously it doesn't happen that often. It's not that big of a deal because I'll just like 5 seconds, I'll pause and I'll think about something else to go down. Mm-hmm. But they do kind of suck. And yeah. I think that pressure is what drives me to enter this zone of what am I going to ask next. And sometimes when the conversation is very natural, like I feel like I entered the zone a lot more in the past.
Yeah.
And I don't enter it as much anymore, but I still do find myself there. Especially when I have some high level people on, I'm always like, okay, this guy's like really high level. Like I need to be listening intensively to everything he's saying so I can ask him some smart question and sound smart. Mm-hmm. And I wonder in your growth as a conversationalist, I wonder, have you found effective ways to better look at that situation? Like how do you improve at that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think yeah, it's tough to say. I think one, becoming more knowledgeable as a person is like makes it easier, which is that sounds so pretentious to say. It sounds so pretentious, but just don't be stupid. But I think like I think maybe emotionally intelligent and like tapping into what people are thinking. And I don't know, sometimes I have to remind myself that like not everything has to like there's like awkward silences happen. Like it is what it is. But yeah, honestly, yeah, I don't even know. I don't even know how I kind of like keep a balance between.
Well, maybe it's like if you're okay. It go back to what you were talking about before. If you're so interested in it, then you're not stressed about it.
Yeah,
being awkward. Because I guess maybe you're so interested in a topic area that you're just I think if you're genuinely interested, you're genuinely curious, and then you genuinely have a million questions in your head.
Right.
because I guess as we were talking, I was thinking more to like some of those specific circumstances. When I was really interested in a topic, there's never an awkward silence. Like, I'll give you an example. Like with the wrestler that I was talking on last week, the whole second segment of the podcast, like the 40-minute end of the podcast, was all about farming. Yeah. And I was genuinely super interested in what I had to say because I try to be health conscious. I try to eat healthy food. And he's basically explaining like he's visited some of these like organic farms and how a lot of it's bullshit. Yeah. And I was really interested in. And there was, in those kind of situations, never an awkward silence. So maybe like it is still has something to do with having genuine interest. And that can't always be forced. So.
Right. Yeah, no, you do bring up a really good point because I feel the exact same way. Whenever there's something that somebody brings up that genuinely piques my interest and I think that it's an opportunity for me to learn a lot about it, I don't think there's anything wrong with a conversation becoming somebody essentially teaching you about this something that you've never learned before, because I think it's so much easier to learn that way as well when you're genuinely interested in the thing. It's so much easier when somebody is just there to explain it to you and you're just able to kind of learn it at your own pace and kind of let the conversation structure itself. Because not everything has to be, if you're learning something, not everything has to be like according to a curriculum. You know, it can just be about, you know, how it's introduced to you. And so yeah, no, you do raise a good point that whenever you're really interested in something, whenever I'm really interested in something, you cannot stop me from asking a billion questions about it.
That's great. And you mentioned that you compared conversations to curriculums, and that's something really interesting that I want to talk about a little bit there that we can get into, because one of the things I love about podcasts, at least most podcasts, is their unstructured nature. Because we sat here, we didn't know what we're going to talk about today. No. We're 30 minutes in, and we've just been talking
30 minutes already? Wow, okay. Oh, my gosh.
And we've literally just, like, broken down the art of talking to people. Yeah. And it's like, no, we did not know we were going to talk about that. And that, to me, is exciting, because I think it's a much better way to learn.
Yeah.
Because, like, if, let's say, Joe Rogan is seated with Matthew Walker, like, there's no curriculum that, okay, we're going to sit here for 3 hours, we're going to touch REM sleep, and then we're going to talk about this tracking thing, and we're going to touch about all in dreams. Like, we're going to break up the podcast. And some podcasts are like that in school. But the art of his podcast is that, like, he's going to sit there and ask whatever comes to his mind, because that's what he's genuinely curious about, and that's where the conversation will go on its own and kind of structure itself. And I believe that's what I learned the most from a podcast, when it's just natural.
Yeah, and I really, really like learning things that way. And I'm curious, have you ever had an experience in school where it's something's been fed to you that way, where you've learned it through just having a conversation with somebody or something like that?
So you're asking, is there a situation where I felt like a natural, like a conversation style of learning through the school?
Yeah.
That's a good question. Let me think. I would say that I can definitely think about classes that follow the curriculum strategy. And I would say I was never too good at learning that in terms of like classes like history.
Yeah.
I was always really bad at history, and I think getting spoon-fed all that was in the class like bio. I'm really bad at memorization, so I would struggle with those. I would say that, I know I was talking about this in the gym, but the discrete math class I'm taking right now, it feels like a lot more free.
It does.
And I think with technical classes, it's okay to kind of follow curriculum because you're teaching very specific kind of knowledge there.
Yeah.
But I think the benefit of having the whole week open to approaching like this big problem set and basically like tossing different ways to look at it and think about it, I feel like I've accessed it to a degree through that class. So I think classes that are not so like, we're going to teach you X, Y, Z, you're going to just like just brute force about a bunch of questions, but questions that are more like open-ended in a way. I think that way I can, like, even if I'm going online and like searching things up, I'm at least kind of following like what I'm confused about or like what I want to learn more about and try to understand it in some way. So I would say that's the closest I've seen.
Yeah, I think discrete math is really structured well, even though I didn't do too great in the class. I think objectively the way that it's laid out, it's very intuitive. Whereas I maybe I didn't find the content as intuitive, but I think the way that it goes from, okay, what's modular math? What's what are some like the number proofs that you can do? What are some of the inductions that you have to? That you're like, what, like, how do you just learn to prove these certain things? I think it's laid out in a way that it really connects well into each other, and are not usually, I can think of a couple times that it does it in the course, but there's not usually like a huge jump in like one topic to the other. It's not like you're learning something that's completely separate from something else and you're just expected to go into that mode immediately. You kind of focus in on a topic like induction, then you learn about what goes into it, what are the different types of it, what are the situations that you can apply induction to, and that has kind of embedded itself in my kind of brain a little bit more, just because it was not such that, okay, this is what the method is and this is how you do it. It was more of like, these are the situations that you would apply it to. Now, how do we get there? And that helps you out way more in some of the later computer science classes where you actually have to like use that stuff. But they're not going to say, oh, use weak induction to do this problem. But it's kind of, that thinking is already embedded in your head because you went through it before. And so I think they do structure it really well in that class. I think when I was the best example that I have of something being taught to me through kind of just conversation or about my interest in it is any of the music lessons that I take. So for music school, I take a lesson every week. And so the coolest thing that I ever heard, because I was so used to, and because I took private lessons throughout, I think since like 7th grade or something. And I was so used to have something prepared for this week and have, do something, like there was always a tangible thing that I was working towards, whether it was preparing a certain piece or something. But as soon as I moved towards jazz, it's way more self-driven. There's not a curriculum for it. You don't just read a textbook and then, or learn a certain piece and then you can play all jazz. It's a very self-driven thing. And so my old private teacher, he kind of recognized that, and he kind of let me drive my own lessons, but I didn't really appreciate it as much then as I've gotten. But I appreciate it more now since I've gotten to college, and Professor Bishop, the chair of the jazz department, he's the one who I take lessons with. On one of my first lessons, he told me, I'm kind of a saxophone doctor, man. You come to me with an issue and I'll prescribe you something to kind of help with that. And I've noticed that, and like in my lessons now, they're with a doctoral student, but it's more driven on what do I want to learn about? What are the chord structures that would help me out the most right now? And they both have endless wealth of knowledge about those things. And so it's really up to me to kind of pick their brain about it. And I've learned so much from that style, rather than if it was just in a textbook and it's like, here is a diminished chord, here is a, this is what it sounds like. But that's not going to help you ever. You have to kind of pick things out in your mind and then have that drive your next question. And that will unlock so much more like, I have gotten such a better understanding of so many things in the music world just because of that. Yeah. And so I didn't even think about it really as my lessons being a conversation until now. So it's, yeah, I think that's probably the best style of learning for me.
That's very interesting, man.
Yeah.
I think there's a time and place for both, in a way, both styles of learning, where here's a very specific problem in a very specific situation, you do a very specific operation to get the very specific right answer, versus the creative process, which is just like get thrown to the wolves and create like a flower out of dog shit or something.
Yep.
Creative process. Yep. I think like, Robert Greene, like he's the guy who wrote 40 Laws of Power. Yep. In his book Mastery, like when he's analyzed the masters of history, he's seen like a pattern where most of the masters will start by following the rules and like learning the rules and mastering the rules, and then they break the rules.
Yep.
And that's typically that pattern that follows. Like you want to be able to be as creative and create as amazing music now if you never learned the fundamentals and then kind of broke them later.
Yeah.
Which I think is kind of cool, because like I'm so grateful for all those like tedious homework assignments I probably went through that are very specific and linearly oriented, because they give you the foundation you need to go enter that creative process. And the creative process to me is really fascinating, because I think it has so much more broader applications than I guess most people realize, because typically, if you look around, like anything is really art in a way.
Yeah.
And to me, that's really magical. And I wonder, like, what does it feel like to you when you're just in the creative process, in the zone, making music out of nothing and creating something beautiful?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. It's really, really interesting. I think once you get to a certain level in whatever you do, and it does not have to be something that we typically think of as art. I like that you say that anything can be viewed as art, because I truly think the same way. But I think once you get to a certain point of like you said, of mastery, you kind of just start to see things, and they just kind of start to happen. A week or two ago, I was kind of floundering around in my apartment, and I just had nothing to do. It was 11 p.m. I think it was a Saturday night. I had nothing to do. Wasn't going out or anything. So I drove up to North Campus, and I thought, I want to make a song. And so I sat down in a practice room for 2 hours or so, made a song, and we're playing it in one of my ensembles. And
this was last weekend, or this is a while back?
This was a weekend or two ago. This might be 2 weekends ago. But it's a very interesting feeling, because at least with music, if I'm going into that headspace or something like that, you kind of just start to hear it at a certain point. There's always kind of melodies in my head, and I think because I've been exposed to so much different music as well, I kind of imagine making something out of a certain emotion, or if I'm feeling, or if I want to describe a certain thing, how would I describe that with music? And I think that creative process can be used in so many more areas than people think. People think that, this is fully not to brag, because I don't think it's something that should be exclusively used for musicians or people who make things that are traditionally seen as art. But like, I've seen so many people that tell me, like, oh, I can never do that. Or, when they look at the piece of mine that I've created or something, they'll say, oh, I can never do that. Or like, that's so amazing, I don't know how you guys do it. But I guarantee, if you put me in, let's say a doctor. A doctor has, okay, obviously I'm not going to be able to do as good of a job as them, but everybody thinks of medical school as flashcards. You're memorizing everything. You're memorizing the human body or something. And I was talking to somebody who's a doctor, and he said that he didn't think of his work as very creative at all. And I pushed back heavily against that, because while it may...
Can you describe his view real quick? Like, what did he view his work as?
Yeah, so he just viewed it as applying concepts that he learned from books,
memorization.
From memorization. Yeah, and so that was his mentality, that if a patient comes in, like, I'm just applying what I learned in a book. Yeah, but I kind of pushed back on that and said, well, there's no patient that's going to be exactly by the book. You are going to be using all of those materials that you've memorized and things like that, and learned and applied to people before them as well, to inform your decision making. And there's not usually going to be cases that are just complete textbook. You're going to have to use some kind of creativity, or you're going to have to pool minds together to figure something out. A hospital isn't just one person who knows everything. It's a bunch of people who know a bunch of different things, and they all work together and use creative decisions and things like that to treat people, make people better. And I think that there's truly creativity in anything that people do, and anything that you look at can be viewed as creativity. It just takes a little bit of alteration of your mind to think that. And it sounds so music school to say that. Like, it sounds like, oh, I just went to the Himalayas and studied with a master, and now I've gotten this new outlook on life. But I truly believe that. I think you could be doing accounting or something that people think as it's like the most boring job ever. But there was a lot of creativity to get there. You were not just built on books and what other people before you thought. You are a collection of all that came before you, and you are using your own independent mind to do that. And so there's so much creativity out there, and there's so much that I couldn't even fathom. I have no I will never have all the knowledge to understand that. But that's what makes it so cool to listen to people and hear about what they do, because then you learn about how they use creativity, even if they don't think that way, even if they don't think that they're
subconscious.
Yeah, definitely. And having a conversation with somebody requires you to be creative. You're not
I see that in my life all
the time. I guarantee you're not having this conversation with me right now thinking about Dale Carnegie's book, like, okay, I gotta listen. Okay, I gotta ask questions. Like, it's just something that you've internalized. Right,
yeah.
Right.
It's incredible, man. Can we listen to your music?
Yeah, sure. Sure, man. I can. Oh, it's
on your phone. Okay, if it's on your phone, it's okay. If you have a computer, it's
let me see. I can pull something.
Yeah, just make sure you don't close Audacity.
Yeah, that would be tragic.
Yeah. I can just put it as like a soothing music in the background. We can.
We'll just edit it over. Yeah. Sorry about that.
That's all good.
No, I don't know. I liked how it came out. It was cool.
It's cool when you make something like that and you're like, how did I make that thing? Like, it's like.
Well, so the interesting thing with that too is that, so I'm in one of the school groups with six other, 5 or 6, I think it's 5 other incredible musicians, and like a lot of things that you're going to hear in the recording are not necessarily just like, I didn't write all that out. I wrote out probably about 85% of it, but a lot of it is them also kind of taking my idea and then kind of molding it into something else, and it becomes not just something that I made, but it's something that we're all making, and we're all making it our own. And so it's like maybe the idea and the structure of it was thought up by me, but we are all contributing to it in a way. And so, like, they're all such incredible musicians that they're all adding their own touch to it, and it's insane to see some of that happen in real time. Especially with the pianist, Roman. What he does on the beginning is amazing. And
Roman, what's his last name?
Newhouse.
There's a Roman that lives on the 5th floor. He's an RA here.
I don't know if he's an RA, but that'd be funny if it's the same.
We can check it out. Like, he has like one of those wall things, so we can walk by.
Yeah, that'd be funny if it was the same dude. Yeah.
There's a lot of Romans, I'm sure.
Yeah, but I don't know. There's definitely not that many, but but like, the part that I wrote for him was legitimately the same chord repeated over and over. I told him that he could do whatever he wanted with it, and he made magic out of a molehill. So it's really rewarding to see your idea be expanded upon by other people. Like that's one of the coolest things ever.
Yeah, I mean, that's incredible, man. I like going back to what you mentioned before about how everything is art. That to me is really cool, because I think all of our human brains, while they're all the same technically like a kind of brain, they get very specialized very quickly. And since we're in a world where all of our careers and the hobbies we do are extremely specialized, where there's no other Christian Manohar. How do you say that name? Manohar. There's no other Sharia Barua. Like, there's literally no other brain that has the exact same texture and knowledge and the same nodes as my brain does. And because of that, when you go very specialized into one area of art or creativity, you just start to see the world in that way.
Yeah.
And that to me is fascinating, because as you were talking, like, I don't know to what degree this might be true, but I don't know what you're thinking about when you're like on the M bus going to North Campus or just walking around campus, like, but in some way, like, your brain is like picking up stimulus from the environment and connecting it with your art. And in the same way, like, as you're talking, I feel like we'd be shocked to enter people's brains and to see like what the hell is going on up there in other people's minds. Like, for me, like, it's crazy because the simple thing of a conversation has become something I obsess over so much about how to master that art that I feel like it's changed the whole way I see the world. It's changed the whole way I interact with people in a way that maybe I'm not even conscious of it, because it's only moments like this where I actually start to sit back and think about it. Like, I see the whole world through this lens.
Yeah. This might be difficult to articulate, but is there a way, like, for example, when you're on the M bus or walking from class to class, is there a specific way that you see things?
There's a book called it's something about intelligence.
Okay.
I've not read this book, but Robert Greene mentioned this book in a podcast he recorded, and I have a copy of it on my shelf at home, but I've not gotten to it yet. And it basically outlines that there's 5 types of intelligence, and I could pull up the specifics. I don't want to butcher it, so I think it's called, like, Okay, 5 types of intelligence book. Yeah, it's called Frames of Mind: The Theory of Multiple Intelligences, and it basically says there's 5 types of intelligences. Let me figure out what it is. I think my dad read this book. Nice. Let's see. So this is according to Howard Gardner's theory, which it might not be the same as that book, but like musical intelligence, spatial intelligence, interpersonal intelligence, kinesthetic intelligence, logic, mathematical intelligence, linguistic intelligence, and naturalistic intelligence. And what I can take away from that is that, sure, it's not like you're in this so your brain is like this, but there's patterns we could see in people who have similar kinds, right? Like, for example, people who have musical intelligence are better with pattern recognition. And that might be something that you may not consciously realize, but maybe as you're going about your day, like, you're able to, like, see patterns better or like rhythms better than maybe other people are able to. Like spatial intelligence is like spatial perception, spatial visual. I think it's like eye related. I'm around mental rotation. Yeah, I don't know this too much. Interpersonal intelligence. I would say if I was looking at me, there's 2 things I know that are in me that do impact the way I see things, which is not even related to the podcast. But one of them is that I've noticed I have a really good sense of direction, and I don't know to what degree that correlates with how I'm seeing things, but I just have a really good understanding of where things are.
So like a map.
Yeah, like I guess maybe my brain like has generated some kind of map of the world, because like whenever like we go hiking or something, like, and whenever we do get lost or whenever we're trying to figure out which path to take, like for some reason there's some like sense in me that, oh yes, this way, like it just makes sense. And
were you always good with that?
That's a good question, because I think I realized it in the last year. But I will tell you, something we can learn from childhood is the types of things we do as childs when we're just playing reveal a lot about our interests as people. It's something that Robert Greene talks about in Mastery. I think you'll like that book a lot.
In what way? I'm curious.
So, for example, with me, I was obsessed with playing with cars. Okay, very basic. And when you look back at your childhood, look at the specific things I used to do. I made my entire home, my entire house, into like this map in my head of, okay, like the supermarket's here, and like this is the community complex. That's like Six Flags over there. It's like this amusement park in New Jersey. And like I would have all these toy cars, and they're all over the house, and they're all driving everywhere. So I realized down the road, like I wasn't obsessed with cars. I was obsessed with direction and navigation. And to me, driving is the best feeling in the world. Just like going to a friend's house who lives 2 hours away, and like I'm just putting Google Maps and like seeing. There's something about directions and navigation that's so fascinating to me, and I think that's an example of how maybe I see the world differently. In a way, and I'm glad I was able to realize that, because I think everyone has something like that. It's just a matter of like being aware of it and figuring it out, because I think that's definitely one thing. Another thing is like I'm obsessed with randomness. It's really weird. Like I'll use randomness to make small decisions for me, like clothing to wear, or
so you'll just like pick stuff out at random, or like
like I'll have like a number generated on my computer saying, okay, pick up this drawer today.
Oh, that's fun.
Things like
that's cool.
Things like the weather are so fascinating to me, because like I don't like checking the weather app. I'm not checked in years. I like just being surprised by the weather. It's really weird, but I think
cool perspective.
Yeah. But go back to the art and the conversation we were having before. I think in some way our brains are very different, and going back to the art piece, I think that when you specialize in that art, that also maybe impacts the way you see the world, because maybe through podcasting I've increased my interpersonal intelligence, where I have a better understanding of other people's motivations, desires, intentions, and I can't say that I've like mastered it to some degree, that like some professional, I don't know what they'd be called, interpersonal genius, but I feel like I've definitely increased my ability in that regard through that. And I don't know, I'm curious, do you, based on anything I've said, like do you see any patterns with yourself in music or just childhood or anything at all? Or?
Yeah, I feel like so it's interesting that you say that you talked about direction and things like that, because I also think like that as well. Like I kind of lay out a map in my head, and I am one of those people who, if I have like the slightest idea of where I'm going, I like to not use the navigation. Like I wanna prove to myself that I know it. Yeah. But sometimes like I'll acknowledge that, and then I'll try and break out of that. I will take an area that I've been in, countless times. The Diag or something, and I'll take even just like one view of it. So I'll just be standing in one area, looking in one area. I don't actually just go out and just stand and look in one area, but I'll kind of look around and say, what if I was just seeing this and had no context for what was around me? What would I think was happening? Or like if I was looking out that window and at that like arch of that building, literally no other context for what's around it, what would my brain make out around it? Can I imagine something different around it that exists in? And so I'll just do that if I'm bored sometimes. It's because I feel like it's a very good thought experiment, because so many times I've been either driving somewhere new or walking somewhere new, and I'm thinking about like, oh, this is cool, like this is new, I've never seen this before. But then sometimes I'll be back somewhere that I've been a million times, and I'll look at it, I'm like, oh, this is not that different, and I'll try and look at that area as if I'd never seen it before. And then it kind of, I might sound like a crazy person doing this, but I feel like it's such a good way to unlock creativity and just kind of get your imagination working, because it's not just something that you would do when you're on drugs. It's like I think it's a genuinely useful thing, because I think people don't imagine as much as they could. I think people are, and I need to like remind myself sometimes to like imagine things, not be so stuck in thinking of, okay, what do I have to do? Like realistically, what do I have to do next? What is the next thing on my agenda? What am I, just to not be completely caught up in what I'm doing, and kind of just look around and kind of imagine things. And so that kind of ties in with music, because when I'm walking places, things like that, I'll kind of imagine in my head, or I'll think about what would the soundtrack to me walking here right now, what would that sound like? Or this view, what would this view sound like? And I think it's like a really cool way to kind of think of something, because it kind of breaks you from the monotony of maybe seeing something 1,000 times. You can always look at something in a different way, and I think that kind of helps you stay sane in a way, because you're not just repeating the same thing over and over and over again. There's always something you can do differently. There's always something that you can change. There's always a different way to look at it. And I think that has been one of the biggest impact. I think that I've noticed that most since being more involved with music. But I don't think that that's a perspective that one can have just through doing music. I think that's something that anybody can have. And maybe, I'm not saying that's something that everybody should have, but I think it's just cool every now and then to kind of exercise your creative juices.
I have a lot of thoughts about that. That is actually fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Because I've never done that maybe once in my life.
Yeah.
Right? I've never looked at something like... I kept looking at that arch. I'm just trying to think about how you might visualize it.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
You remove all context. You remove the road, the cars, the building, and you just look at the arch.
Right.
And I think what you explain with unlocking those creative juices is very applicable, because our human brain has this way of trying to make everything familiar very quickly, because if you're familiar, you're more predictable, and if you're more predictable, you're safer, and in that way, back to our evolutionary origins, like we have less chance of dying from the wolf or something like that, because we're able to be familiar and predict our environment. And that might be a great feature for living out in the woods, but it kind of becomes a bug when you're trying to unlock those creative juices, because we're so attracted to familiarity. That's why when you see someone just start acting differently in a way, it's like we immediately felt repulsive to that, because we don't like changing people. We like familiarity. We like things that we're used to. And that way, like, I probably, how many times I walk past that arch? Not a lot of times, but I can think about a lot of places I've been to 1,000,000 times in my life. And maybe I've done that once or twice. Like, I've really like looked at something and be like, I've walked past this thing how many times in my life? Have I ever like actually looked at it in a way? Maybe not as intensively as you do it, but going back into the way you do it, for you, it's not something that you like read or it's a book and started doing like consciously. It's more of a subconscious thing that when you're bored and your brain has the freedom to just wander, you often sometimes find yourself there.
Yeah.
And I think that proves to be something that's maybe unique to you genetically, from experiences, from your dedication to a certain type of art, that trains your brain to pick up these fun games that it likes to play in a way. And I play fun games in my brain too, but different ways, like I think for me, there's obviously you'll sound like a crazy person to anyone who's listening because no one does that in particular, but they do crazy shit in their head too, and they just don't talk. They don't know about it. Like for me, like something I do is that when I'm going to somewhere that, let's say I'm driving to my high school, it's a boarding school, so it's about an hour from my house, right? I'll go on Google Maps, all right? I will see that Google Maps generates 3 ways to get there. And I will look at the time, and usually there's like 3 paths to get there. I'll look at the time and see it's like 1, 2, or 3, and then loop back 1, 2, 3, and based on that choose which path I'm going to take. It's like randomly, because like I'm obsessed with like seeing like how different routes add up, and like, okay, one day I took the highway here, one day I took the back roads here. Like that to me is really fascinating. And long drives, like 10-hour drive from Jersey to Michigan was like the most satisfying, beautiful things in my head, because there's something about that randomness, there's something about that adventure that it just comes together, and like that's the weird thing that I do, and like that's the weird thing that you do. But in some way, in both ways, well, we can very clearly see how your thing applies to creativity. I think a little bit of everything applies to creativity. Like there's some sorts of like randomness in creativity as well.
Absolutely.
That, like how you take that couch and you pair it with that giraffe and you make something like weird and whatever.
Right.
Like I think in some way, like our brains are all attracted to creativity. It just they manifest in different way, either based on your intelligence, style, or something. But that to me is remarkable, man.
Right, and I feel like we're so attached to the term creativity, which maybe has a set definition, but it, as more of a concept, it's not a thing that's that tangible, because like I've kind of explained, like in my head, it might mean something completely different to something that you're thinking about in your head, but like I totally vibe with like choosing different routes, because it's that kind of thought of like, you know, I've done this so many times, but I want to see new things, or like I just want to see this thing in a certain way. And not letting like the kind of burden of knowing that this is the fastest way or whatever, not letting that kind of govern you, just letting yourself govern you, and letting what you want to do, and maybe what you want to do isn't as efficient as something else, but you're doing it in your own way that you want to do it, and that's like. That's what matters, is that you're doing something on your own terms, and that's how a lot of creativity stems, is from you doing something on your own terms and letting that grow and stuff like that. And like from people not necessarily inclined to choosing different routes to go somewhere, they might not see the creativity in that, but I see a lot of creativity and wanting to see different things and see different ways that these add up.
It makes you feel differently. And like,
exactly. Yeah. I do similar things when I tried different ways to go places that I've been, to see if it saves a little bit of time, or if it doesn't, it's fine. Who cares? Like, it doesn't really matter that much at the end of the day. It's just something that you do to keep yourself sane. I
guess there's a joy. We were talking about this with your cooking thing, right? That it breaks up the day in a way where you can just take your mind off of whatever you're thinking about before. And, you know, it's good to not always be a slave to efficiency, because I would say I try to be an efficient person. Like every minute of my day is scheduled with something on my Google Calendar, and it feels good to like be busy, be efficient. But then it's like, oh, okay, this route's 10 minutes faster, so I have to take that route. But sometimes it's like, okay, like fuck efficiency. Like the joy of art and creativity is so satisfying for some weird reason that like I don't mind driving an extra 20 minutes and go this way instead. Yeah, it's like it's just cool. It's relaxing. It's like a break. Yeah, like that's why I genuinely enjoy taking the M bus like every like once a day to go up to North Campus, because like it's just a 20-minute break. I just like stop and just chilling and enjoying the ride. And just,
exactly. It's something you can turn your brain off, and you don't, or maybe turn your brain on, but it's a way to give yourself a break from being on all the time. You don't need to be on all the time. You don't need to be working up to the next thing all the time. You can give yourself a break, and it's so hard to give ourselves a break sometimes. I struggle with that immensely, of just giving yourself the time of day to kind of to chill out. But you know, I think it's important for each person to identify like what's a way that you can let up on yourself a little bit, and not be always pushing yourself to. And that's not to say that you should not be driven or something like that, because I think like I don't want to speak. I don't want to just call myself driven, but I think you're incredibly driven as well. You are as well, of course. And I don't think I don't think anybody would think that you giving yourself a couple minutes a day or even just like an hour to just kind of chill out is going to make them think that you're not that way. And I think we're so caught up in always being on and never turning off that it's tough. And that's why I like working out. Like it's something that I know I'm going to enjoy every day. It always brings something new because, you know, I never know. Like I'm always going to be pushing myself harder, but I know it's going to be something that I enjoy. And it's kind of a way for me to kind of turn off while being on at the same time. That sounds so stupid, but it's a way for me to kind of kind of lock into something that I know is not going to be.
Maybe really it turns off like the thinking, planning part of your brain and turns on the creative part of your brain.
Yeah, I think so. And it might be hard for me to see the creativity of myself in lifting weights, but I think
there's definitely creativity.
There's creativity to be seen there in terms of how somebody structures their own workout, how somebody trains, what they're training for. I mean, there's endless things that one could do in that space. yeah, exactly. It's adult playground. It's
that's all it is.
Yeah. It's just It's like my recess every day. So it's at 7 a.m.
That's what it feels like.
Yeah. I mean, it does. It's like, why not start your day off with something that you don't have to put a lot of thought into, but you're gonna enjoy, and you know that you're gonna be pushing yourself. Fun. Yeah.
So much fun, man.
Like it's
amazing, man. There's one thing in particular that you mentioned that I found pretty interesting. Mm-hmm. That when you're talking about you described me as a driven person. You said that if I give myself an hour break, it's not like anyone's gonna think I'm less driven for that. Mm-hmm. And I think in the last couple of weeks I've noticed this pattern that I think driven people feel bad about taking breaks because they're worried about an external perspective. Because the way you worded it, it's like, I'm worried that someone else is gonna think that me taking a break will make me weak. Mm-hmm. And that was when I actually thought about that deeply. It made it seem as if like driven people are driven because they care about how the world sees them. And I think if you dig deeper, like a lot of people are driven by that. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, like you don't have to. I've realized that you don't have to put that much pressure into giving yourself a break because truth is the world does not really give a fuck. They're not like I think. For some reason, like it's so easy as humans to just feel like everyone's watching every step of every single minute of the day we're doing, and like if I sleep in 10 minutes, like I'm weak.
Yeah.
And I've definitely had moments where it was a lot deeper into that like mental affliction, but I think I started to realize that no one's sitting there and watching you and like analyzing everything you're doing. The second they see you slip up, like there you go, like you messed up. Like it's really interesting. Like we all look at discipline in that way. Where it's like we're like someone's watching and we have to live up to it for someone. What do you think about it? Do you see it in that way?
Yeah. Well, I think first and foremost, people care way more about what they think of themselves and what other people think of them than what people actually think of them. Like, this is not to say that nobody cares about you, but people are not giving you the time of day like that. They're not preying on your downfall that hard and watching you so closely. But yeah, it's interesting because I do think a certain amount of drivenness, for lack of a better word, does come from that external thought of, other people around me are doing this, or, it would look cool if I did this or something like that.
And there's not always something wrong with that.
Right. And I think it's a good motivator to see people who are doing the same, if not better than you. That's one of my biggest motivators, seeing people that are doing better than me, who are better than me at something. It makes me want to be better. I feel like it's good to surround yourself with people who are working so hard. But I think there's also, for somebody to truly be like at peace with their with their own nature, with their own like drivenness or their own drive, a certain amount of it needs to come from within, from an actual desire to be better or to do something because you love it. And I think there is a lot to be said for doing something that is good for you because you love yourself, rather than doing something that because you hate yourself or because you would feel bad otherwise. And I think there can be a certain point to where you do something that's so good for you that like if you don't do it, you kind of like you feel because you want to do it, like you feel bad about it. Like again, to bring it back to the gym, like I feel bad if I don't go to the gym because I like being there. Like I like doing it. It makes me feel good, and it makes me happy to be there and to see the people that I like seeing and to do the thing that I like doing. But you know, if like, and I'm gonna be mad at myself if I need to take a rest day or something that I don't think I need to, because you know I'm not gonna be able to. I'm gonna miss out that day or whatever. I feel like I'm gonna be like so far behind. But yeah, I feel like it's hard for me to balance that drive of you know how much of it is driven from within and how much of it is driven from externally. Because I think there actually is a lot of good to become from being driven externally or having some kind of just outside force that's not necessarily forcing you in this direction, but it's motivating you to go harder. Yeah, I don't know. How do you find that balance? Like are you able to find a balance in between those two, or do you think like do you feel more motivation coming from within or coming from outside?
That's a great question. I think we never know the true reason why we do something. Mm-hmm. I think the more introspection you do, the more layers you find. Yeah. And that to me is honestly kind of cool because when you're aware of it, it doesn't bother you as much. It's like, mm-hmm. like that's actually kind of cool in a way.
Right.
What I've come to realize is that anything I do end up pursuing that I think serves me in a way that's good for me mm-hmm. has both. Mm-hmm. Now, I see the problem arise when I'm only doing it for the external.
Yeah.
Because there have been moments in my life where I will do something solely for the external outcome, although the activity brings me no personal joy.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that I've cultivated activities that I genuinely love. Mm-hmm. Like podcasting is an activity I genuinely love. And right. I don't really care I don't feel like I do this for any external outcome, but there's obviously, I feel great when people talk about the podcast. I feel great when I see people listening to the podcast. Mm-hmm. I feel great when people like comment, like send me messages saying they watched this episode, they really found it really interesting. Like that makes me feel really happy. Mm-hmm. But that's not the only reason I do it, because it kind of gives me a joy that some art I created that I find beautiful, other people can find it beautiful as well. Yeah. I think and it's like, I know for something like the podcast, I love it just for the sake of it. There's no external outcome I'm pursuing. It'd be cool to make money off of it. It'd be cool to get all the numbers up and everything, but I never define it. Obviously, I'm not always perfect about this, but I don't always define a podcast successful based on the views it gets, but mm-hmm. I define it by the feeling I have when I'm walking out the door, like how much depth did I find in this person, how much did we connect. That's always a definition of a good podcast for me, and that's why I feel that something like this project, there's enough personal ambition and drive there, mm-hmm. but there's obviously some external validation for it. Yeah. And if I look back at other activities like the gym, like I love just being there in the gym. Mm-hmm. I love lifting weights and pushing hard and working hard. And I also feel great if I build some muscle and people compliment that. That feels great. I love the feeling when I'm going really heavy on a movement and I'm stronger and people are complimenting that. And there's a little bit of both. But if it was only the compliments, which I guess certain points, like that was the only thing I was pursuing. There's certain activities maybe that I feel like I only want to do this activity because I feel like it would be cool to do that activity and people would look at me better. Like I remember this one time I just wanted to like pick up all these like martial arts sports like boxing and all that. And I realized that I think wrestling is a sport I really enjoy, but then mm-hmm. I realized that my intentions for pursuing other things, like there wasn't as much intrinsic joy or meaning behind it. It was more just like it'd be really cool if people like saw me as that thing, for example. Yeah. But I think everything I've found, there's an element of both. But another really cool thing that, just one last point I want to make on this mm-hmm. is that, again, that's good to look at the external validation versus intrinsic motivation behind a pursuit. I also think that even if we think we're doing something for intrinsic motivation, even if there's minimal external validation involved, there might be a third reason behind why we do something that we never really look at. And mm-hmm. I think it takes a lot of introspection to look at that. And often there's one thing that matters more than anything that drives everything we do. And I can give an example for that. Mm-hmm. I've noticed that this year in particular, like 2024, like this summer, this school year, going to like my freshman year, like I've been more, I would say I've always been academically focused, but more academically interested. Mm-hmm. That I'm actually like excited about coursework and stuff that I wouldn't be able to say that for most of high school. I saw school as an obligation to achieve an external outcome more than I kind of enjoy learning about things.
Yeah.
Based on the way it was designed, I think that there was nothing like in particular that fascinated me through that system in particular. But for some reason, like this year, all of a sudden, like I'm like find these clubs really cool and interesting. I find like academic coursework really interesting. I find like I used to hate CS, and now I'm like, okay, I actually am down to pursue that more now. Like, I'm actually like excited to look for internships next summer. Which I wouldn't have always been able to say that. And everything seemed like an obligation for an external outcome, which is getting to a good college. Yeah. And I was actually thinking about the other day, like I was on a walk just at nighttime, and I was thinking like, where did this come from? And when I really thought about it, and it clicked in my head, it was like, oh, this makes a lot of sense. The reason why I became so academically focused right now and interested is because of the podcast. And when I drew that connection, it made perfect sense in my head because I think I formulated new role models like this year based on people I follow. Like someone like Lex Friedman, whenever I watch him do his podcast, I feel like he's so technically intelligent and smart in some subject areas. And I feel like maybe there's something inside of me that tells me I need to be more qualified. And I close my eyes and look 10 years in the future and I've gained all this knowledge. I know so much. And because of that, the podcast is that much better. And I thought about it more, like a lot of things I do are for the podcast. And I think that, sure, I have all these interests now, but like what's the real reason that all of a sudden it came out of nowhere? It's like, oh wait, like I want to be more smart so I can be a better podcaster. Like I want to get better at speaking and stop saying like so I can become a better podcaster. And I realized that the more I look at a lot of things I do in my life, it comes down to like a central purpose, which I think that's really cool.
Yeah. Is there a specific like other class or direction in your academics that like the podcast has pushed you to, or that like you want to become specifically more knowledgeable about this thing that would make you a better podcaster about the subject, or just make you a better podcaster in general? Like, is there a specific direction that it pushed you to? Like, did it push you towards CS, or did it push you towards, I don't know, a different area? I'm kind of curious.
Good question. Yeah, I would say that I wouldn't say it pushed me to CS because CS is something I kind of knew I was going to do throughout most of high school, I'd say. And the reason behind that is that my dad pushed it a lot, that this is he did a lot of CS before, and he thought he put enough time in to make sure I was prepared in a way, so he got me into it early. And I wouldn't say like I loved it in high school, but like I did it, and it was like, oh, one day I'll figure something out that I'll apply this to. But I kind of applied CS Michigan, like not really excited about CS, like whatever. So I would say what the podcast helped me do is that it didn't push me in a particular direction, but it made me want to be intelligent in somewhere. It made me, I think because of that, it made me more curious about the world and like what can I pick up and learn, because now it's like it's so exciting to learn about like technical things or how things work. And I don't think I had that before, but I think it's pushed me to just be more curious about how the world works in general. And I think that pieces kind of fell in place where like I just started enjoying CS at the same time, and because I've been doing it for so long, and I feel like I've already built some expertise here. And then it's like when I think about humanity and like how many incredible things there are in the world, like like race cars is one thing. I was never like into race cars in particular, but now it's like it's fascinating how they come together, how we're able to build this from the ground up and build something incredible. I mean, I watched like a bunch of podcasts about new technology like Neuralink, that it's so incredible how that comes together. And now I'm starting to see the connections. Like I like problem solving, CS a lot of problem solving, and now I'm like connecting things together. It's like I just want to keep picking up skills now and kind of just see where it takes me. Like my mindset is that whatever feels good right now, I'll lean into that, and then just keep leaning into it as long as it feels good.
Yeah, that's a really good mindset to have, because it's such a good. Again, it's a good mindset to have to learn something out of just a genuine want rather than an obligation. Because one, you learn it so much deeper when it's something that you're genuinely interested in. But like when you have something that you actually really enjoy doing, and becoming better at that is going to help you become better at that. Like the other thing, it is extremely, it's motivating. I mean, it's really cool. In the strangest, like most roundabout ways, I feel like me becoming a better musician helps me become a better data scientist or ML engineer. And it sounds like ridiculous to say that. Like I fully understand that, but I think one, being able to kind of tap into creativity and kind of just get that side of the brain flowing, and that might just be fully pseudoscience, but I think having a hobby or something that's on the surface so different from something else that like you're interested in or you're doing full time. Like for example, like CS and podcasting are not necessarily the most tied things together. Like it's not like one comes up when you think about the other. But I guarantee the more you podcast, the more you able to talk to people and able to learn from them and helps you learn from your professors and learn from colleagues and stuff like that and peers for when you're programming. And then when you're programming, it helps you problem solve and figure out, okay, what are ways that I can work around this? What are ways that I can make my recording quality better, or what are the ways that I can optimize outreach or things like that. And it, like, having two hobbies or two interests that are just in completely different ballparks can help each other out so much more than I think anybody would really imagine. And I really do think that becoming a better jazz improviser has helped me in data science and has helped me think about things in a more roundabout way and think about things in a way that I might necessarily not have. And it kind of almost frees up my brain to kind of to think about things in a certain way rather than how it's just fed to me in my database management course or something. Like it allows me to kind of think through it in my own way. And I think that's such a valuable thing for anybody to have, is just a way to process the information that you're getting through another kind of lens. You're not necessarily always looking through life with a lens of CS or always looking through life with a lens of art, or I feel like everything's art, but like with music or something like that. And it just helps to kind of look at things in different ways. And you don't necessarily need to be doing that consciously, because there's no chance that I'm going to be looking at my database management project, but like, how can jazz help me with this? But I think it's kind of just helped me have my thought process out a lot. And I think it's really valuable. I think it's really cool that podcasting is kind of in its own way driving you towards doing like a career that you're now more interested in because of it. And like, on the surface, one would not think that getting into podcasting would make somebody want to go into CS, but the groundwork is there, and there are connections that people may not immediately see. So I think it's really cool that that's kind of the third thing that's driving you. And I feel like that's a really interesting point that you brought up, that it's not necessarily all internal or external motivation, but while I may kind of feel like it's an external motivation, it's kind of a mix of the two, because it's something that you've kind of decided on yourself that you want to do, but it's also something that is coming from out there. And yeah, that's a really cool point that you brought up. I never really thought about it in that way.
There was something you mentioned about having two different hobbies that are completely correlated somehow help us to get better at one of the other hobbies. Mm-hmm. I think that most people who would disagree with that are only looking in a logical sense, that there's nothing in particular you're learning from jazz that applies directly to data science. But I think one of the problems with specialization is that, going back to our conversation about how your brain operates and sees the world, when you become a master or an expert in a specific subject area, your worldview like narrows quite a bit. Mm-hmm. And you're kind of stuck in this other language of a way of like how you see the world, and you almost like can't see any other world.
Yeah.
You're just so locked up into your worldview, like how you see the world through the experiences you've had that have led you to these beliefs. And as a CS expert or a biology expert, like that's how you see the whole world. You see the world in terms of biology, or you see the whole world in terms of neuroscience. Mm-hmm. And having that activity like jazz in addition to data science, it pulls you out of the thinking mode of thinking in terms of data science, and mm-hmm. it helps your brain think in a different way.
Yeah.
And even if there's no like specific logical thing I learned from jazz that applies to data science, when you're like disentangling these nodes, like they were connected here, and you like mm-hmm. kind of connect them in this way for pattern recognition for this other skill you're developing, mm-hmm. you also formulate other connections in your brain, related to the original problem that weren't really there before. And I think one thing a lot of neuroscience researchers show is that the more like diverse you are in the things you do with your life, like the different part of your brain is required for like hiking and mountain biking versus sitting down and like coding on your computer versus like creating incredible jazz music, right? A different part of your brain is being utilized there, and they're just increasing the number of connections within your brain, which is really good for your brain health and longevity and preventing disease like dementia, etc. But it's also good because when you formulate those new connections, you see things that normal people don't see.
Yeah.
And I think that is a really incredible thing, and it just makes sense that the more hobbies you have, like the more different ways your brain is trained of thinking in.
Right.
And the more like you have a little bit of each of those kind of intelligences in a way. And so when you say that, it doesn't seem like nonsense to me at all. Like it makes perfect sense.
I'm glad. Yeah. I think there is. It feels strange to say, but I think it's like you said. When people get specialized so heavily into something, it's very, very easy to only view the world through that lens. And while you may be like incredibly smart, you can do all these things that the general person probably wouldn't be able to do. You probably see the world in a very specific ways because of it. And if you aren't a kind of diverse person with kind of like far-reaching ideals or just things that you enjoy doing, it can be hard to kind of view the world in a more neutral sense in a way. It's almost like you need to have things pulling at you and pulling you in so many different directions to actually see the world in like a neutral way, or to see it in a way where you can kind of understand other people. Because I think had I only done data science, it would have been hard for me to see a lot of the art in the world. I think a lot of like, I'm not going to pretend like I like a lot of modern art, but I can see
paintings in particular, or
like everybody knows like
modern art,
like the very abstract art. The I think the most famous one is like the banana peel taped to a wall or something like that.
Is that like a specific work of art?
Yeah. If you just look up like banana peel taped to a wall or something, it'll show up, like modern art. It'll show up, and people were very upset about it.
This.
Yeah. Okay. Just a banana taped to a wall, and that was art. And I'm not going to pretend that I love that. I mean, but again, like it caused a lot of anger from people because of, I could do this. But like that's kind of the point, is just to kind of elicit a reaction, and not all art is something visual or audio. There's a lot of it is just how it makes you feel. So I don't think I would have been able to kind of get that as much, and I don't want to sound pretentious, like, I understand all modern art. If you don't like this, you're stupid and dumb and wrong. Because obviously I don't think that way. You can think about whatever you care or whatever you want. Like, I don't really care. But it's like that's just how I view it. But then again, if I had only done music, I probably wouldn't have been able to understand the very analytical side of things, and would probably have maybe been a little too like out there and carefree about things. Because unfortunately, the way the world is set up, you kind of have to be in a privileged position to do art. You either have to get really lucky. What
do you mean by do art in this case?
To kind of appreciate it, just because it doesn't pay a lot to be an artist full time unless you.
So this is strictly like painting form of art, or just that?
I think. Yeah, I think in the more traditional forms of art that we see.
Even like music, I guess.
There's a lot of broke musicians, a lot of broke artists, and going back to the before, when we're all cavemen or whatever, living in the forests, they're probably not going to be thinking about art all the time. Like, they have food to put on their plate. And so I acknowledge that being like into art and stuff like that, it kind of comes from a privileged position. But I do think it's important still for people to kind of acknowledge that. But I do kind of understand when people don't necessarily put that much stock into it, just because everybody's in different positions in their lives.
I would say maybe for pursuing a career, I agree. But I don't think in terms of appreciation. Because, I mean, even if you look back at the hunter gatherers, sure they weren't doing as much art as we were, but they still felt an inclination to it. Like I don't know if you've seen those like cave paintings. Like it's pretty cool that there's something so intrinsic about humans that we access it in some way. And, I mean, a lot of people that have come from difficult circumstances have been able to create such incredible poetry or music, and I mean, I think pursuing a career strictly in that, I agree with your point that like it's hard to become a singer and make a lot of money off of it, or any form of art, even content creation or just paintings. Like it's hard to pursue that. But I think I don't know if this was your point actually, but about appreciation, I think anyone can really create it in that way and appreciate it.
Yeah. I totally get where you're coming from. I think definitely to appreciate it, it's you definitely don't have to have a master's degree from art school or anything like that. But I think there is a certain amount or a certain like level to some art where it is hard if you have not put a lot of time into it to fully understand it. And like it makes me a little like I get a little sad about that sometimes because I think there are a lot of really cool, like I appreciate a lot of some really random and obscure music.
Like what?
So there's this electronic group called Inoyama that focuses solely on like weird, not entirely glass chimes, but it's a lot of like glass chimes and stuff like that, and electronic like ambient music. And when I'm listening to it, I'm not focusing on you know what chords they're using or whatever. I'm focusing on how it makes me feel, and I think it takes a lot of or you just have to have somebody kind of push you in the right direction to kind of go towards more of how does this make me feel when you're listening to music, because it's very easy to just get caught up in the notes or the harmony or something, but like how it makes you feel is the most important thing ever. And so some of the times, like my favorite songs ever, I will purposely not learn how to play them because one, either I have no idea how to approach it, but also learning about it kind of breaks the magic down a little bit because it's more about how it makes you feel. It's not about.
So there's like something beautiful about the song that they were able to create this, and you don't want to kind of break that joy or mystery.
I'll give an example.
And what was that name of the artist?
Yeah, so it was Inoyama. So INOYAMALAND.
I found them.
Yep.
Do you have a Glass Chime?
Glass Chimes is a good song.
Pretty cool. It's like, what are you feeling when you're like listening to
this? So, it makes me feel like. It makes me feel like I'm in a garden almost, and I feel like I can. Like I feel like the glass chimes up top are almost like butterflies going around the garden, and like you're just kind of walking around. And maybe it's like maybe it's because I know the album cover, but it's like an emerald garden or something like that.
Is it on this?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So it's like a similar color to that, and you know. It's a very different looking world, but I like so like if when I'm listening to that, I'm not listening for, obviously not lyrics or anything. But I'm not listening for chord content or anything. Like I'm listening for, how does this make me feel? Like, you know, because then if you learn about how it's made, how they did that, it's cool in its own right. Like, okay, that's really cool. I have no idea how they made this. Learning how they had done it is awesome. But then you're like, oh, well, that's what that was. Now I can't. Now it's harder for me to imagine that that's whatever I'm thinking of in this time. And so that's what kind of draws me to that kind of music. And so I think like just take a random person. This isn't like to say that I have the most eclectic and random music taste ever. I like it. I'll listen to anything. Yeah. But I think a lot of people would not necessarily enjoy that much, or would not listen to a full album. Relaxing, you know? Yeah, it's super relaxing. Maybe they wouldn't listen to a full album of it while just walking around. And if they do, that's awesome. Like that's cool. I love that. But I get a lot of the impression that it would not. And so I think I have just acquired that taste a little bit more, just because not only have like I learned about some of that stuff in school, but also like I've just that like my life experiences and stuff have kind of pushed me into liking that. And so not everybody has like their lives set up in a way to where it pushes you towards that certain thing. It might push you towards a whole different direction in music, and that's cool. Like whatever somebody likes is what they like. But I think I feel like sometimes learning more about the music and just diving deep into it gives you a way bigger opportunity to kind of enjoy so much more. And it's really cool. I can find the positive in almost like any kind of music.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. I think it's so weird to me how we can't really explain some of the things, like why do humans like music?
Yeah.
And it's so weird because everyone likes a slightly different kind of music, and everyone feels a slightly different emotion or feeling, and it's really weird to me. And I mean, everyone has their own opinion on it. Bliss Chapman, who's one of the he works with Neuralink. I don't know if you know who he is, but his one of our funny theories about music is the only reason humans like music is because of entropy, or we like music because it's like a similar tune but something slightly different about it, and like our human brain is obsessed with things that are different for a survival mechanism thing. And the only reason we like music is because we hear this one chord and then the next verse is like different, or like we hear the similar tune and then it's different, and we like this entropy or this like differenceness, and we're obsessed with that as a human nature brain. And that's an interesting theory. I mean, it'd be a little sad to say that's the only reason we appreciate music. But, I mean, there's other theories that I have in my own head that I think that it's all about hearing that certain sound at a particular moment in time that's severely emotional that associates them in a way.
Yeah.
Like, for example, I never liked rock music that much. Like in middle school, high school, like I would listen to I would hear rock songs once in a while, but I didn't feel any emotion with them. I didn't understand them. But I was like, some people like it, whatever. And then during wrestling season, they'd always play rock songs, and I never really cared much. But some reason when I stopped wrestling, all of a sudden I fell in love with rock music.
Yeah.
And it's like, I've heard these songs like over and over again every practice, and I've heard it so many times. I never felt anything. But all of a sudden, like, now that wrestling's gone in the past, it's like the whole year, like my whole Spotify thing has shifted from like all this rap music, like all this rock music, and I'm obsessed with that now. And I think to me that makes sense in my head that my brain kind of associated something I loved a lot with that music, and now it's like I love that music.
Absolutely.
It's really cool.
So much of our enjoyment in music is dependent on the context of where we heard it or how it was made or something like that. And one of the things that I enjoy the most in music is when you can hear the artists and the musicians themselves like having fun on the recording. And that's not necessarily just in recordings where they're talking or whatever. You can like literally hear them. Although there is like this hilarious, this amazing Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers album where in the background of like one of my favorite songs of all time is called Pensativa, and in the background you can hear the band leader Art Blakey like just yelling like while and like talking to the band members, and he's like blow your horn like really loud, and they're all you can all hear them like having a lot of fun. And you can hear the joy of music happening in it, and I think that's like such a powerful emotion. And even in songs where you can't hear the people, like you can feel it. And I think that itself, hearing other people's joy is impactful in so many ways. You know, like if we hear somebody laughing, it's going to make us more apt to laugh. If we hear somebody being happy, it makes me feel better if I hear somebody being happy. You know, so it's I think that is one of the reasons why it's so emotionally impactful, is because in recordings like that last one, like I feel
last charge.
Yeah, I feel like joy listening to that. I feel like they had a lot of fun making that. Probably they probably weren't sat away with like, you know, like welders overcoats just at the pianos just
yeah.
You know, they were having a lot of fun with it, and the music reflects that. And so that's one of the things that I value the most. Really cool. And having good memories with it definitely will, you know, supercharge your enjoyment of that. Just having some kind of memory attached to it, you know. And I think that's really cool that like you retroactively got into rock. Because, like when you listen to rock now, does it remind you of wrestling or
maybe? But it's not my immediate thought. It's not like such a clear correlation, but obviously it does. Sometimes some songs like, oh yeah, like I heard this once. But it's more of like this. I get this energy from it. It's excitement. I just want to smile. It's like great energy, and yeah, dude, it's really cool, this music stuff. I mean, that happiness part is a really interesting one too, because there's so many songs I can think about that I love so much because they're literally just laughing as they're singing the song. Like, there's one song in particular. I don't know if you listen to much rap music, but there's one song called "The Food" by Kanye West and Common. Okay, and they're just like you can just tell they're having a great time. Yeah, they're just like laughing and they're just like having a great time, making a great song. And whenever I hear it, I just smile because like I'm just having a great time with them. And I think when I watch podcasts, like you kind of can tell like when they're just having a good time. They're just sitting back and talking about life or some deep shit or some funny shit. Yeah. And like one podcast in particular where I really felt like connected to the people who were recording was when Lex Friedman had Paul Rosalie on. You know Paul Rosalie?
I feel like I've heard that name.
Yeah, he's the founder of Jungle Keepers, so he lives in the Amazon, and he's been trying to save the Amazon. Okay, he does some really incredible stuff. He's like real life Tarzan.
That's super cool.
Yeah, Lex Friedman, he flew out to the Amazon and actually stayed with him for a couple weeks, I think, and they recorded one podcast where he brought a suit to the Amazon. They're outside in the jungle. They have the table set up and the mic set up like somewhere, some random place in the jungle. And it's like, it's nighttime and it's hot as shit. And you can tell Lex is sweating. And they're just sitting there for 4 hours.
Oh my god!
And then just talking about the jungle and animals and stuff. And then it's get into some like random deep conversation about the meaning of life. And it's like dark outside. The sun just set. And there's like a random moment a snake just pulls up. Like a tiny snake. And they take like a 10-minute detour for the conversation to talk about like this tiny snake because it was like safe. It was very, it was like this thin, like a shoestring thin.
Oh my gosh.
I think I'm glad I watched that podcast visually because even when they're just sitting there and just talking about like what life means to them and death and anything, it's like you can tell like they had a lot of fun filming that, and there's a lot of like depth and meaning behind that. And I think in any form of art, music, podcast, whatever, like you can connect with the emotions of the person creating it. That's what your point was, like the happiness emotion, like the walking through the garden feeling, just like the admiring eternity and existence is something I love.
Yeah, it's the best thing ever when you can feel somebody's like soul that they put into their work, you know, like that, like that's essentially two dudes just bearing their souls for anybody to see. I mean, there's no more really vulnerable place than the Amazon, and so you know it's really, really incredible. I feel like that's one of the reasons why we can connect with music. I feel like music is such a universal, you know, form of art. Like there's a lot more. I think most people can enjoy more music than they can enjoy most art, more physical art. And I think it's
more emotions and more senses. Sorry.
Yeah, you can totally feel somebody's like emotion when they're putting into a song. I mean, even just the concept of, you know, when you hear somebody talking, and maybe you can't even see them, but you can hear that they're smiling when they're talking. Like that's one of my favorite things in the world is when you're listening to a song or something, or you can just hear them like they're having a great time. It's magical. Like it's amazing. You know, it's the human experience put onto a record for other people to kind of share in and enjoy that. And I think that's why it attracts me so much. I think that's why it attracts 90% of the world. Everybody in the world has some kind of music. Everybody who developed independently of each other, it's all developed, and we've all kind of found ways to get into it, and it's really amazing. It's really amazing when you think about it. And like, I don't know, I never really think about, like, if somebody tells me their music taste, it's just the coolest thing to me, because it's like, okay, like you get so much out of this that I might necessarily not be able to understand, but you're able to get so much out of it. And like, I think it's awesome that you can make something, and maybe some people won't necessarily like get as much out of it, but there's somebody out there who's gonna vibe with it totally.
When you find those people, it's like,
yeah, it's awesome. It's so cool when you find people that vibe with your stuff. It's cool. It's yeah, and music is cool.
Beautiful.
It's really cool. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, dude, it's beautiful. I think that one album in particular I think about that I think is my favorite album of all time. The album cover is just him smiling. and then the whole album is just that energy.
Which album is it?
I can pull it up. It's called "Be" by Common.
Okay.
Have you heard of Common before?
Yeah, I've heard of Common. Yeah.
Like this whole album, like the album cover speaks to how beautiful it really is. Like, it's this one right here. Like you just see.
Oh
smile.
You see him and just smiling. Yeah.
This is one album I could say has no misses. It has 11 songs and 11 perfect songs.
Oh, I love that. I love that one. It's just
yeah.
You can just listen to it full, and it's cool also. Especially when you can find a full album like that where it all kind of flows and you can hear, not necessarily even, like so much information is inferred based on which songs or like the order of the songs and how they flow into one another. Like you get so much from the person. Yeah. How was the flow on that album from song to song?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. So, Kanye, this is album from 2005. So before he even dropped College Dropout, Kanye produced 9 out of the 11 songs in this album.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he was big in the producing world before he came out and released his own music. And 2 of the songs were produced by Jay Dilla.
Oh, nice.
You know Jay Dilla?
Yeah.
And I think John Legend is featured on here. And, like, there's... It's... I don't know. It's the definition of beauty in my eyes. Because every song is, like, a different emotion you're feeling. And there's so many songs that you could just tell they're having a great time. And I guess we like to be... It's, like, one of those albums where... Sometimes I listen to an album a lot and then like get bored of it for a little bit and then come back or just get bored of it forever. And this is one album that from the first day I heard it till now, like I haven't gotten bored of it yet.
Nice. How long have you been listening to it for?
I heard it for the first time it's my sophomore October, I think.
Okay, so
junior, senior, freshman. So it's been 3 years ago.
3 years. Wow, and it's still like
in your
okay.
That's still the number one.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, do you listen to a lot of jazz music in particular, or you just make jazz?
Yeah.
I only know like Miles Davis.
Yeah. I listen to a ton. One of my favorite records is called Boss Tenors. So I play the tenor sax, but mainly I play all sax.
Is that the album or artist or?
Yeah, it's the album. It's called Boss Tenors.
By who?
It's by Gene Ammons and Sonny Stitt, and I should know the rhythm section on that, but I don't. But the focus is it's 2 essentially giants of the tenor saxophone. These are 2.
What era is this from? Like what year?
This is from the 50s. I want to say like 54 or something like that.
Yeah.
But it's 2 like giants of the tenor saxophone, and they're coming together, and it's 5 tracks long, and it's just so much fun because they bounce really well off of one another. And
is there vocals in it? Just jazz?
No, it's just. I'm
gonna check this out. Here, let me write this down.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah,
tomorrow.
Yeah.
What are you hitting tomorrow morning?
What'd you say?
What are you hitting tomorrow morning?
Chest and back.
Okay, I'm hitting some back tomorrow, so
nice.
Probably see you around.
Yep.
All right, what's it called?
Boss Tenors. So it's Boss and then Tenors.
Tenor.
TENORS.
Boss Tenor. This one.
It's Boss Tenors. So it's a different one.
Same person though.
Yeah, Gene Ammons and Sonny Stitt.
Straight ahead from.
Yep, straight ahead from Chicago. Yep.
Okay, I'll save this.
Yeah, and it's just like I don't know how much jazz you listen to, so like
I only know like Miles Davis.
Yeah, it won't offend me if it's not your thing at all, but it's like
I'm always down for new music.
Yeah, no, I think it's just a really fun time, and they both have really different sounds, but like they bounce off each other really well, and in the song in particular, There Is No Greater Love. It's
Wait. I think I heard a rap song that sampled that.
Really?
Let me play this for you right now. I've not heard this.
I'm curious. Yeah.
I've not heard There's No Greater Love yet, so you can tell me if this is the same song. All right.
Yeah. Well, it might be based off because that's a song that.
Because this is a jazz sample in the song.
Yeah.
Okay. Here. I'm hoping it's the same one because this would be epic.
I wouldn't.
Same.
It's the same original song. So it's not from that.
Oh no, obviously,
track.
Yeah, but they took the sample and put it in their song.
Right. So yeah, it's of like the same same like underlying song. So like the recording is gonna sound like because it's just saxophones, there's no vocals.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah.
But yeah, that's cool. Yeah, so that's from the.
You can see him smiling in this album cover too.
Yeah.
That's how you know it's a good album.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
I wonder if this is the same like tune though. Oh, this is the same one.
Yeah.
Because at the end of that song, I hear this part.
Greater love. Yeah. That's super cool. What song?
Okay, so I was actually gonna bring these up in the podcast today. I was just waiting for the moment to do that. But
nice.
So there's this rap duo called Blue and Exile.
Okay.
So Exile is a producer, Blue's are an MC. And mainly popular 2000s, early 2010s. Duo. Exile's a producer, Blue is the MC, and basically, do you know about soul sampling?
I don't. Is that like a technique in particular?
Yeah, so it is a technique used in rap. All right, so I can give you an example. This grew in the 2000s. I think Kanye and like a lot of those producers in the early 2000s were using soul sampling a lot, but they would take an old soul song, they would take a tune out of it, like some person singing, like some vocal singing, and then they would turn that into a rap song with a beat behind it. So let me give you an example. Like one of my favorite albums of all time is The Blueprint by Jay-Z.
Right.
So one song I like is like this one, right? So you can hear like those singing in the background. A lot of those are samples he took from soul songs. So if I search up Never Change original sample, right? Jay-Z, who sampled? There's like a nice website that actually does it for you. So let's see. So this song, Jay-Z, it took a sample from this song right here. Come on. Never change. So this is a soul song, right?
Yeah.
I never change. One single grain of sand. So it's a long soul song, but that one part where he says "never, never change," he turned it into this song. So soul sampling is incredible, and I love soul sample rap. Pretty much like
super cool.
People college dropout, like every song there's a soul sample. Like, I know you've heard All Falls Down. Yeah. Even like Common album, they're all samples. So what Blue and Exile do like uniquely that I'm not seeing a lot of people do. I think MF Doom does this too, but they sample jazz songs. So what this album. There's one album called Miles, which is incredible in my opinion. Miles by Blue and Exile, where they're apparently like big jazz fans. So this whole album is like sampled jazz songs and it's rap,
cool.
And it's just incredible.
Like, I should actually listen to that, see if I recognize it.
You probably would because like I think No Greater Love is off of one of their albums called Below the Heavens.
That's so cool. That's like that. I never would have thought that a song would have sampled There's No Greater Love.
Yeah. No great. And at the ending, it's like it's very obvious. I think. Let's see. So that piano ping, I'm pretty sure is from that original. I can confirm that. Let me see.
That's super cool.
Let me get the exact part of that.
There is no greater love than what I have for you.
So that's what the song sounds like?
Yeah.
That's there you go.
No greater love. Yeah.
So, okay, it says that it's sampled. Okay, it says it's sampled a different song, Smokey Robinson and the Miracles.
That makes sense. I mean, I wonder if that's like a soul version of, because. Oh, that's really cool.
But yeah, that to me is really cool because I like rap song. I like the soul stuff and it puts together. It's
like, no, it's super cool because I mean, I like a bunch of people have recorded like that song in particular. So it's.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah, that was actually a really common practice in jazz. Like a lot of the tunes that they would play would essentially be like the pop tunes of their time, but they just like they would lay out the melodies over their instruments and then they would have the chord changes and just improvise over the chord changes. So like Miles Davis, Someday My Prince Will Come, that was just like a pop song back then, but they made it into their own thing, and so
that's really cool to me.
So like that's what a lot of like early jazz is them doing that and playing other people's stuff, and it's really it's really cool, but like it's so fun seeing like then how the music evolved to like all the way to rap. Blue and Exile, like it made its way into rap, and like it.
And I hope it will just keep going for like whatever's next.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it all kind of stems back to like the
origins.
Yeah, like jazz in New Orleans and stuff like that, and it grew into so many. Like it grew into half the music we know today. It's awesome.
I think that's where creativity comes in as well because again like. rap is such a new idea of music that I mean I'm pretty sure rap was there back when a lot of these songs, because rap started to grow in the late 1900s, so maybe not 50s but like 60s 70s it's starting to grow as more prominent and maybe the original people who designed the song could have never even imagined the way that Blue and Exile use it now. It's like I wonder what their response would be to that it's like a whole another way of looking at something that like humans' minds could not even imagine or process before a certain time period.
Definitely. I mean, it really does make you wonder, like, what is music going to sound like even 50 years from now? Bro. Yeah, I mean, because 75 years from now, or 75 years before, it sounded completely different. 75 years before that, it sounded completely different. And we have, all this technology now where everybody in their mom can make music. So it's... you have so many different minds that are coming in and so many different ways that it's evolving, and it's like evolving with the amount of technology that we're getting now. Like it's all going in tandem with one another. So it's extremely, extremely cool to see, and it's cool to see also like all the music and stuff from today. Like it's all compounded from all the stuff from beforehand. It's all standing on the shoulders of who came before them, and it's awesome. It's the best thing ever. Like
it is.
Tracing the roots back and seeing,
where did this come from?
Yeah, and especially when you see somebody like Kendrick get into work with Kamasi Washington, and who I don't know if you know who. Do you know? He's a really great jazz saxophonist.
Wow.
Of this time, and
what's this time?
Like he's working now.
Oh,
and
so
he works with Kendrick and stuff like that.
Wow.
And like a lot of the stuff on To Pimp a Butterfly, a lot of the saxophonist is Kamasi Washington.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, a lot of it is him, and he helped a lot with those records. But so like it really helps to show like this is where it came from, this is where it's going. It's kind of acknowledgement. This is all coming from the same stuff.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah. It's really cool.
I really gotta take a piss.
Go for it.
I'll take a piss and we'll come back.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. I'm wondering if you could walk me through your creative process with music in particular. Now, I know that a lot of people, it's kind of hard to describe because it's not like a logical thing. It's not like you're solving a math puzzle or like studying for a specific exam. It's very different and nuanced and different every time you do it in a way. But I've always been curious about it because I guess the way my brain is designed, I just can't understand like how you create music. Like to me, that's, I don't know, like I listen to these songs and I'm like, I don't know how to come up with something like that. That's so beautiful in that way. So I'm wondering if you could walk me through like your process behind making music, creating music, or even anything you want to touch on in that sphere.
Yeah, for sure. So there is a kind of, there are a couple schools of thought with this, but there, and I'm always kind of arguing with myself of do I want to lay the mood first, or do I want to come up with a melody first? So it really just kind of depends upon the situation. But if I'm really forcing myself to be creative, I will think of a phrase or something, or think of just how could I describe something? Like if I were to describe like that tree out there that's turning and looks completely beautiful, how would I describe that? And so then I might go to the piano and see if I could like work out a nice sounding chord that might work with that, or just something like how does that make me feel, and see if sometimes my fingers will automatically navigate their way to somewhere. I'm not a good pianist at all, but like I've kind of learned like some chords and stuff to where I can figure something out like that. Or I'll grab my saxophone and I will let my fingers just kind of go and see where that takes me. And if I come up with something that matches that, I will kind of internalize it, or I'll write it down, or I'll just record it or something like that, and then see if I can kind of match that vibe. So for example, I'll just speak to the process that I had when I was writing my last song that I made, when I just went up to North Campus at like 11:30 at night and spent like a couple hours and wrote something. So I have been listening a lot for a couple of years now to like Japanese city pop, and stuff like that. And that's a sound that I really, really enjoy. And the sound that I enjoy the most about it is that there's a lot of ambiguity in it. And what I mean by that is that in a lot of music today, there's a lot of it's very explicit what's happening. There's a lot of starts on the 1 chord, goes to the 4, goes to the 5. Like, or when you go to the 5, that means you're going to the 1. Like, it's almost a formulaic process. There's nothing wrong with that, but I like it when there's a little bit of, when you hear something and you're like, whoa, what is that? And so it kind of, the idea in my head is started with, well, one, there's this song that translated to English is called Pedal. And so I wanted to write a song that was called Pedal Point, because in music there's a term called pedal point, P-E-D-A-L. And so it's just kind of a pun. But I was thinking, okay, if I was writing a song that was kind of embodying this style, but I was also thinking about like flower petals and stuff, or like a vibe when I'm making it. How would I go about that? So I went to the piano and I just laid out some chords. So I started with an F major chord, but the way that you structure a chord really determines the way that it sounds. And that sounds really stupid. The way you structure a chord is the way that it sounds, of course. But a chord can sound way different. It would make it so much easier if I had a piano here. But like, there's a very standard like major sound. Bum, ba, 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 bum. It's a very standard major sound. But if you kind of like space out the voices, you get different emotions. If you get if you put the notes really far apart, it's the same sound, but it sounds way more open. It's like, whoa, like you get a very open sounding thing, and that leaves a lot of space for you to kind of for you to work with. Now you can also choose to do really closed voicing, so you can put the notes really close together and it still sounds the same, but it sounds really claustrophobic now, and it's a different kind of sound. And there's this specific song that I always think of when I'm thinking of closed chord voicings. This song called Ray 1 from the anime Neon Genesis Evangelion, and it's a very eerie track where the chords are super close together, but it's a very like hauntingly beautiful track. And so I was kind of thinking about, okay, how do I kind of embody this feeling of like, just like, I kind of want it to be a little bit open, but I want there to be a kind of little bit of ambiguity. So I made sure to space out with the bottom of the chord so it's very obvious what it is, and then the upper structure of it is very close. So you kind of get a mix of the two. And so then when you're listening to it, you kind of like it's a very interesting feeling. And I kind of knew like which ones I wanted to go towards. So I set up like the structure of it. So I put the 1 chord there, and then I had it move to another one, and then I just kind of built a melody around that. I literally put the 2 chords into my music notation software, let them play, let it loop, brought out my saxophone, and just noodled until I found something that worked. And what ended up coming to me was this melody. Ba-da-ba-ba-bum, ba-da-ba-ba-ba-da, ba-do-dum, ba-da-ba-ba-bum, ba-da-ba-ba-ba-ba-bum, and it keeps on going. But so like my ears just kind of found their way to that, and that's partially, or no, that's not partially. That's entirely influenced by just what I've played in the past. But then, like, after I kind of got down that basic melody, basic chords, I just kind of go from there, and it just kind of, the music doesn't write itself, but in my head it kind of writes itself. Like, once I kind of lay down the groundwork, then it just kind of like it kind of makes sense where I want to go from there.
That's really incredible, because the way I'm understanding it is that we can kind of translate it into human logic, but it's really like a step down in a way, where it's like when you have an idea in your head and you explain it in words, like you can't explain every single piece of the idea, but you can translate it in a way that people get a sense or understand it in a way. Absolutely. And I think the way you're describing it feels similar to me in that way, because okay, the way we're approaching the creative process, we start with something, right? Whether that be looking at the tree outside the window, and just start there and just think about the tree and observe the tree and notice what you feel about the tree and the energy you feel with that, and then translate that to directly to the piano or to other emotions that lead you to here, to lead you to there, or you start with a sound you may have already heard from some show you watched or something you heard like on the train, or you just like you pick up these random like starting points in a way, and then you kind of take one step at a time, like, okay, let's go this way, okay, oh, like how does that make me feel here, or how can I complicate this here, how can I access that here, and it at the end of the day it makes itself, because you didn't have any plan of like where this is going, but in a way we can somehow understand it through human logic by kind of step by stepping it a little bit. But to be honest, like the way you're describing it makes it feel like, again, art, like there's so much more randomness behind it. And
but I also think it's almost as if I'm solving a problem, where much in the same way where if you're given, you have to code something, you have to write code that does this, that achieves this thing. I kind of view it in my mind as, okay, if I'm going to write a song about this tree, what's it going to sound like? If I'm going to solve this code or if I'm going to write this code to where it does what this question is asking me to, what is it going to look like? And they kind of start in similar ways to me, and that's part of the reason why I think like creativity is just in everything. Like I think more people look at that. People may not necessarily look at a coding question and then think about how to do it. They might not see that as creativity, but I think that basic problem solving ability is it's just a creative process in and out of itself. You're finding a way to solve something or to figure something out or to represent something. And I think it's just as applicable to music or to any other profession as it is anywhere. Like it's really fascinating, and I bet money that you go through the same process.
Yeah, I was actually just thinking about the way you're describing it. Like there's so many terms you use to describe it that I feel like I've used to describe podcasting. Like I genuinely have used the term in my head that the podcast kind of make themselves. Yeah. Like I love not having any idea about a person and just like, we start somewhere. Like for you, start at the tree outside. For me, I'll start with a casual small talk. Like, how was your day? Like, how was your lift this morning? Very small talk. And it's like the way you navigate from, like, it's kind of like you're solving a problem, but for me, it's kind of like you're going on an adventure. Like, you're starting with this, like, this is our bullet point A at the small talk. And then, like, there's 3 different directions we can go based on that. And then we go like this and this and this and this. And we find ourselves, like, all the way up there. Yeah. Like, we're starting with, what do we start the conversation with? It's like, oh, how you like going up to North Campus and just like meeting people there. And then we went through this whole adventure in a way of talking about our conversational skills.
And that's where we started the conversation. Yeah. I forgot about
that. We spent 30 minutes breaking down how we've evolved our conversational skills. And then we kind of, there's an art behind the conversation, and then we got so deep into art, and then I wouldn't be able to tell you I remember everything we talked about today until I'm going back and editing. I'm like, oh yeah, we talked about that too. But we talked about everything from music to taking breaks in the day and not following the intrinsic motivation. Like, we talked about at least 100 things in the day. But what I love about the podcast is when I say they make themselves, is that the theme that emerges makes itself. Like at the end of the day, I'll end a podcast and I can wallpaper it in such a way that, because I know there's that one theme there that kept coming back, that I can wallpaper this around. Like where in this podcast is art, creativity, the creative process, and how we talk about something and we just analyze it through the lens of art. Like we'll talk about something very basic and then all of a sudden like there's art there, and oh this, and then there's art there. Like we're talking about like computer science, oh there's art there. And I think that I've had so many podcasts where a theme just emerges, and I think that tells me something about how we're connected as humans, that take any 2 random people in the world, there's something in common there, and just put them in a room with no phones for 3 hours and you'll find it. Yeah. They just talk, and then the same thing will keep coming back. Yeah. And to me, like, most people don't look at podcasts that way. I think a lot of people think of them as education, which is great, or just entertainment, which is great, but I think about it as like the most beautiful like Mona Lisa that you could ever imagine. You know? Like,
I'm curious, is there so one, do you, even though you say that the podcasts make themselves, like, do you have like a preconception of preconceived notion of what you think the theme is going to be going into it? And then 2, is there a time where you had, like, if so, is there a time that you thought that it was going to go somewhere, and then it went completely somewhere else.
Yeah, every podcast.
Yeah.
I think this podcast in particular was an interesting one because sometimes I know a person at least decently well before I podcast them. I feel like I didn't really know you too well because we've only like had 2 or 3 small talk conversations for less than 5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
So, and some also like I didn't read your bio till like 5 minutes ago, and honestly, like it's not a bad thing. Like obviously you did it last minute, but I was actually more excited about the fact you did it last minute because I actually have nothing going in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like sometimes I'll read a bio and I'll read a little bit beforehand. Like, about like I remember like the last podcast, like I read that he was on a farm and stuff, so I read a little bit about that in advance, so I had some knowledge there. But this one's like, it's more fun when I have no idea. Right. And this podcast in particular, I would not. There's no world or scenario where I would have predicted the outcome of this podcast because I don't even know about the whole music story behind it or the art story behind it. So I think this podcast in particular, definitely. But then let's talk about situations where I know the person really well. I can have the same person in front of me. Like I've had one person on 5 times. Yeah. Like one of my close friends from my home, and every time the podcast goes somewhere else. Because I kind of think about it like, let's say you're like driving on a road with like a million different like paths you could take, and like every time you go somewhere to flip a coin, which way we go, and like there's like 100 different destinations in the end. Even if it's the same person you're talking to, like our whole conversation could, if we made certain decisions early in the conversation about what we started talking about, and then like what we got deep into, we could have had like a whole like 2 hours about like lifting weights. We could have, or we could have had a whole like other topic that I can't even think about right now. But it's unique, like how every time I podcast someone, like I think the podcast with my dad 2 episodes ago was also, I was thinking it'd more be about like goal setting and something like that because that's a lot of things we have in common, and it ended up being like 50 minutes of us talking about like dealing with loss. Yeah. And I'm like, where did that come from? Yeah. And it's like magic. It decides for itself. So every podcast, man. Yeah. And I'll tell you, there have been podcasts where I try to prep it a lot, and I'll like prepare questions and I'll come in with my full knowledge, and I hate those podcasts. I just hate them.
Is there one in particular? Oh, okay. You don't have to call it out like you hate it, but just like
I don't really hate anything.
Like, but just like you prepared a lot for it, and then it hindered your experience a little bit of it.
I would say the Navy SEAL one is a really good podcast, but I could tell that it was. I actually made a list of questions with me on the side as like emergency questions, and it wasn't crazy because I still asked questions on my own on the fly, but I realized that whenever I start reading the questions on my list and start seeing how I can ask them, I wasn't listening for like a split second, and I forget what he was talking about, and I feel like I had many of those instances where like, oh shit, like wait, what was he just talking about? And I was just reading my list of questions here, like trying to get through this like long list of questions. And I'm like, then I just throw a question at him that like came out of nowhere really. So I think that was more on me than anything. Yeah. But then again, with increase the volume, like you're doing this, like you'll learn those kind of things. Right. Like I try to go in with no prep usually, and they end up going. No, it's a good prep isn't like I'll read about it beforehand, but I'll not bring something with me that I'm trying to like craft this in some way and restrict it. But
right. Yeah. No, that's cool. I can imagine. I haven't done a lot of interviews or like interviewing people, but it does seem like there's a certain amount of it that you can plan for, but like I think the best interviews you just can't. Yeah. You know, it should just be a free flow. Yeah, exactly. But that's cool that you've I don't know, at least been able to be cognizant of that, like because. Yeah, I can fully relate to, talking with somebody about something that you may not be that like or not interested in, but you may not just be you may not be that knowledgeable about, and then you turn off for a split second. You're like, oh jeez, wait a minute, oh man.
Yeah, and you know what? Like I'll tell you, not to call out anyone or anything. Like I was on a podcast once. And the person who podcasted me, like she's a great person. Like she's on my podcast too, and she does incredible things in her life. And I actually look back and listen to that podcast, and it was a great podcast. But I definitely noticed an energy I would feel when the guests can know when you're just reading off a list of questions. Yeah. Like if I sat here and like read your bio and just made like 10 questions right here, and I'm just like reading off of them, okay, and then you're just answering it, then I'm reading the next one, you're answering it. It's like I felt as if when I was being interviewed in that way, I felt as if like no one was really listening to my story.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm just saying a bunch of words at the screen, and then the next question is like random and weird. Like I just said something, and then about like how I didn't enjoy this thing, and then she's like almost ignored that question and like asked me a question about the thing again. I'm like, wait, like
yeah.
But it's like you can tell that, but you can correct me if I'm wrong. But I think there's a different energy the guest feels when it's like they feel like someone is attentively listening and formulating questions on the fly.
Oh no, definitely. I mean, it works way better as a. Not to bring it up for the thousandth time, but it works way better as a conversation. It doesn't.
The full circle.
Yeah, the absolute best podcast that I'll listen to will be when people are just genuinely talking. It's not like an interview specifically, and like interviews are fine or whatever, but I like
they have their time and place.
Yeah, they have their time and place, but not when I'm waking up in the morning and I'm just trying to cook or whatever, listen to a podcast. Like
what do you listen to?
I usually listen to a lot of like comedy podcasts. So there's this podcast called the Trash Taste Podcast.
Okay.
It's just these three dudes.
Who hosts that?
It's just three dudes who live in Japan.
Okay.
And like they're only like one of them is like half Japanese, and so there's all like ridiculous lives, and like it's really funny. And like there's other one called Creepcast where they just like read horror stories and make fun of them, and it's really funny. And so like that those honestly I value a good laugh out of a podcast, and I do just like it when there's just a lot of fun conversation going on. So like that's kind of what I look for in one.
That's cool. Yeah. All right, we're back. Take a quick pause.
Yep.
So we were talking about conversation again, and I want to loop back to something that we talked about in the beginning, that when you've improved your conversational skills, the main focus of that seems to be making yourself less self-centered and more curious and better listener. And these things that are related to more of the contents of the conversation itself. I want to mention something that I've noticed with you, recording with you for almost like 2.5 hours now, that I noticed that there's skills in you that I see as a good communicator as well. And there's two things in particular I noticed. There was your vocal tone, which maybe you've gained that through music or whatever, but you're really good at changing your vocal tone as you speak to like emphasize certain words and to de-emphasize certain words or certain sentences. I don't know if you've consciously noticed that, but I've noticed your vocal tone to be really good, and your hand expressions also. Like these two things, I've noticed you throughout the whole podcast, either describing things or showing things, and changing your vocal tone in a way that effectively communicates it to a better degree where we can hear the emotion through the contents. So
thank you.
I want to ask you, were those consciously implemented in the same process where you consciously made yourself less self-centered and consciously improved your other conversational skills, or do you think these are natural things you've had, or they're built with time? Or
yeah, that's a good question. I think the inflections thing may have been. I'm thinking about it a little bit.
Yeah.
I think the inflection thing maybe came a little bit more with good conversation and stuff like that, because obviously beforehand when I would be talking with my friends and things like that, my voice would change, but it wouldn't necessarily be in a way to emphasize certain things, or maybe in a sense of I don't know. I mean, maybe it's because I practice public speaking a little bit more, but I feel like. I think those kind of made themselves those two aspects, the vocal inflection and I think the vocal inflection is maybe a little more recent. I think the hand gestures maybe is
public speaking.
Yeah, that could be just from learning a little bit more about public speaking. Now I've never actually taken like a public speaking course or anything, but I've had to do a lot of I've done a decent amount of teaching. I have a private student that I teach on the saxophone, and so and before as well, I've had to essentially hone my teaching skills. Not necessarily because I'm not becoming a teacher or anything, but it's really important to be able to explain things to people. And I've noticed that one, especially with like a student, if it's a singular student, it's helpful if you like watch your tone when you say things, and it's not like I'm purposely holding myself back or something to.
Well, it's become natural now.
Right. I think you just wanna have a certain way of talking with them where it's not like and I'm not taking a tone worse than I'm teaching you right now, but I think it's
I need some tone 101.
Yeah. Study up. This is what you gotta learn.
Do I pronounce words like this or like?
Yeah. But I think yeah, it's just important for that to be something that you can control, and I think it helps people kind of focus in on you a little bit more when you are a little bit more dynamic, and it helps people them not get bored of your voice.
Exactly.
That's like one of my biggest insecurities is I don't like my voice, and I think that's like everybody's insecurity or whatever. And if you do like your voice, that's good. You should not change it. But so I've almost deliberately like tried to make my voice more palatable, but yeah, I feel like the hand gestures thing also is with just comes with teaching. I'll give an example. So in high school, I wrote a jazz band piece for my high school jazz band to play, which I was playing in at the time, and I had to essentially lead a rehearsal for that piece, and so in that rehearsal, I had to teach the band a few things because just like for a quick rundown. Like tonguing and stuff and articulation in music is very important, and usually that's notated, but in most jazz music it's not notated, it's just implied. So like I wrote all the implied notation, but they were playing it very literally, so I had to explain, like I had to basically give them a lesson of this is how you actually read it. If you're seeing a jazz chart, you don't read it this way. And so I think that I only led like 2 rehearsals, so that has, I don't know how much of an impact that made, but since being I'm the music director for Blue Bop, so I lead all the rehearsals for the band, and so one that makes me, I need to be a clear communicator, so I need to be able to have the attention of the band while communicating things very clearly, and letting them know what's going on, but also making sure that it's a friendly tone and that we can that it's very amicable what's going on.
Yeah, I definitely noticed that. I like the piece most about how it breaks the monotony of it, because I think the second you hear your voice change a little bit, then people like open their eyes for a second. Oh yeah, well, what did you say? And it reminds them that you're saying something of substance in a way. So it's really cool, and I think those are things that as I keep upgrading, I'm always obsessing over like what's the next skill I gotta develop. And I spent 30, 40 podcasts trying to get rid of and I think I've done a good job, but it comes back every now and then. So it's just consciousness.
I get it. No, you've done a good job.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And, man, I feel like I go another 2 hours and 45 minutes.
We might have to,
but, unfortunately,
run this back.
Yeah, we'll do it again, and we'll get the Blue Nile squad or the 7 a.m. squad, whatever you want to call it on.
And, the lifting crew.
Just one action step from the podcast. Tomorrow morning, when we're hitting, I'm hitting back and biceps, you're hitting chest and back. I'm going to listen to Boss Tenors, Straight Ahead from Chicago, 1961. And you're going to listen to
Blue Exile.
Well, I'll have you listen to Miles just because it's more jazz heavy. So it's by Blue and Exile, yes. I'll have you listen to Miles by Blue and Exile just because it's jazz focused. I think you'll like it. It's very,
I'll definitely like it.
It's like eerie and mysterious, but like beautiful. It's like,
oh, that's my jam. That's my jam.
I think you'll like it. Off this conversation, I think you'll like it.
Yep,
so,
that's my jam.
Yeah, man. I'll see you tomorrow morning then.
Cool. And, I'll see you.
It's a lot of fun.
Thanks for having me on. Yeah, this is awesome. This is really fun.
Great, man.
All right. There's no greater love than what I have for you. No greater love. Bum, ba, bum. Bum, ba, ba, dum. Ba, da, ba, da, dum. Ba, da, ba, da, ba, 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 da, ba, dum. Ba, da, ba, dum, bum. Bum, ba, da, ba, da, ba, da, ba, da, ba, ba. Ba ba da ba da ba da ba 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 da ya ba ba ya ba 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 da ba ba da ba da ba ba da ba 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 da ba da ba da ba 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 ya ba 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 da ba 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 da ba 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 da ba da ba da get up, ba ba da bum bum. Still going. Good. That one.
Yeah, it's good. Thank you for tuning in to my episode. If you enjoyed that episode, I guarantee that you'll love this episode right here. The best way to support the channel is by hitting the subscribe button. It'll help me to upgrade the channel, get better guests, better production, and overall more episodes for you. And by hitting the subscribe button, it'll ensure that you'll never miss a new release. While you're at it, hit the like button, leave a comment, and share the link with your best friend. Thank you once again for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.